I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz. Well, I'd better wrap up because Mayor Adams told me earlier that I needed to make this one very quick, especially the city has reserved this room for a large group of illegal aliens coming in from Texas. There's a group called White Dudes for Harris. Have you seen this? White Dudes for Harris. Anybody know? Are some of you here? White Dudes for Harris? Doesn't sound like it. But I'm not worried about them at all because their wives and their wives' lovers are all voting for me. A major issue in this race is childcare, and Kamala has put forward a concept of a plan. A lot of people don't like it. The only piece of advice I would have for her in the event that she wins would be not to let her husband, Doug, anywhere near the nannies. Just keep him away. That's a nasty one. Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? He looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the following program. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, a.k.a. Good Logic. Another day in the books. Another good day for President Donald Trump and for America. God bless them, man. It's like I can't even remember what it was like to live under the yoke of tyranny. That was the Biden administration. Although we're going to talk about some of the bad things, it's just exactly how terrible the Biden administration was. Oh my God, so terrible, so terrible, so bad. If you want to understand why, it was so terrible. I had one other clip that I was thinking about opening with tonight. This kind of explains why it was so terrible. Right over here.
Y'all gotta forgive me. I'm a little distracted. This is the first show I've ever done with an interpreter. This is fucking cool right now. Well, I'm trying to learn shit. Retard. Democrat. This is the same thing. It's the same thing. I knew it. Democrat. Retard. Democrat. Dude, you gotta be kidding me. Are you kidding me? I did not set this up, Democrat. It's the same thing. I quit. Mommy, good night. I love it.
Maybe that's why. I don't know. Maybe that's why it's so rough over there. I don't know. But one person who had been forgotten by the Biden administration and was remembered and rescued by the Trump administration came home today, and that is a young Russian-American ballerina by the name of Ksenia Karelina.
We are back with a Fox News alert. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirms that Moscow has freed a wrongfully detained Russian-American ballerina. Alex Hogan joins us from our London bureau with all the details. Hey, Alex.
Good morning, Ainsley. So American-Russian dual citizen Ksenia Karelina, who had been detained by Russia, is now free. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio confirmed the news this morning, writing on X, quote, saying American Ksenia Karelina is on a plane back home to the United States. She was wrongfully detained by Russia for over a year, and President Trump secured her release. POTUS will continue to work for the release of all Americans. Karelina was arrested in January of 2024 in Yekaterinburg during a visit to see her family. She was jailed for donating about $50 to a charity supporting Ukraine on the first day of Russia's invasion. The court found her guilty of high treason, sentencing her to imprisonment in a penal colony. The amateur ballerina and Los
$50 sent to a penal colony.
Angeles resident became a U.S. citizen in 2021. Her family and her loved ones have been vocal in their efforts demanding her release.
on the Russian side, they make it very difficult because they don't recognize Ksenia as American, which is absurd for me. But the U.S. State Department said we're trying relentlessly. Every single day we are trying to get close to Ksenia.
She was freed in exchange for a German-Russian dual national. Now, this prisoner swap took place early this morning in the UAE. This is also the second U.S.-Russian prisoner swap to take place in less than 2 months.
Yeah, so that gives you a brief overview of the story here. A brief overview of the story. But when Adam Schiff is talking about this release, what does he write? What does he write? They're so twisted, these folks. Ksenia Karelina was wrongfully detained and imprisoned in Russia for over a year while visiting her family. Today, after far too long, she'll arrive back home in California. Welcome home, Ksenia. Like she just walked on out of there on her own. Like, you can't, even when Trump accomplishes something which is clearly a remarkable accomplishment that Biden wasn't able to do for a full friggin' year, Trump gets it done, and they cannot even acknowledge it. It's like they will be broken if they're forced to acknowledge anything. It's awful. They're such awful people. Megyn Kelly, who had her boyfriend on her show recently, broke down the story in far greater detail, and this is such a great accomplishment. Let's hear her breakdown here.
That ballerina we told you about, Ksenia Karelina, she's on her way home. It's unbelievable. It's a miracle. I can't believe it. I'm so thrilled. I'm so grateful to President Trump and Secretary of State.
This is not her fault. She's not someone who was giving to the Ukrainian war effort. While she was still in America, on the first day that the war started, she gave a charity on Venmo here in America. So she's here in America, and on Venmo, she sent like $51 to like this charity for children and the elderly in Ukraine. And it happened to be the day, maybe it was after war was started or right beforehand, but she sent it to a Ukrainian charity, and then later went to Russia. And as soon as she got off the plane in Russia, she was sent there on a trip by her boyfriend. And as soon as she got there, she got arrested. And the next thing she knows, she's sentenced for treason for giving money to a charity, a Ukrainian charity.
Marco Rubio. She has dual citizenship, Russian and American. She's an amateur ballerina over here. And for the last 15 months, she has been wrongfully detained in Russia on these trumped up, bogus charges. And now
it could buy bullets. That's true. She sent it to what is reputedly a charity. Could it buy bullets? Yeah. 12 years. 12 years that she got for $50 that she gave. 12 years. Hard labor. 12 years hard labor for something she did while she was in America. 12 years. Look, you've heard me blast Ukraine, and in particular Zelensky, as basically being evil, corrupt, manipulative, warmongering, terrible human beings. And I've also always given a certain caveat, and that caveat specifically is none of this is to say that Putin is a good guy, okay? I don't think he's a good guy. I said, I don't know much about his evilness, but I'm sorry. Any way you slice it, this is friggin' evil. That the moment she steps off the plane, you're going to throw her in prison for something she did 2 years earlier, the day the war started, that she sent $50 to a charity for 12 years. If you think that that's in any way like something that seems like, oh yeah, that's an appropriate punishment, that seems, I'm sorry, that seems very, very fascistic, like a high level fascistic. It does. That's my opinion. You could disagree. I'm curious. I can't believe that people in good faith think that that's not fascistic.
It's free. This morning, Secretary of State Marco Rubio posting to X, quote, American Ksenia Karelina is on a plane back home to the United States. She was wrongfully detained by Russia for over a year, and President Trump secured her release. The President of the United States will continue to work for the release of all Americans. Last August, Ksenia was convicted again. These are ridiculous charges in Russia as she visited family there of state treason and handed a 12-year prison sentence in a Russian labor camp. Her crime, she donated $51 2 years prior while in the United States as a U.S. citizen to a U.S.-based nonprofit that helps children and elderly impacted by the war in Ukraine. $50, you guys. The details of what happened to her are downright frightening. So she traveled to Russia for the first time in 3 years to visit her elderly grandmother. Her family still lives over there. First, she was detained for 16 hours at the airport for interrogation. She never even made it past the airport. Under suspicion, she might be some sort of a spy. Then she was released, but they kept her phone. And boy, oh boy, did they go through it. That's how they found this payment on her Venmo. And they found the receipt of this donation.
2 years
on
later.
Monday, and by the way, and then they charged her. First, they accused her of hooliganism. That's what they charged. And then they upped the ante to treason, which you can go to jail for a long, long time for. Originally, it was like 15 years. And then they were talking about a life sentence. And they strong arm.
I wonder that also. I assumed that perhaps it was like a conversion rate into like Ukrainian money or something. I don't know. It's a weird number.
Her into copping a plea because she didn't want to go to jail forever. They were like, well, you can go to jail for maybe 5 years if you say you did this. And she didn't think she had any options. So she did, and they gave her a 12-year sentence. On Monday, I mean, literally 4 days ago, we had a long interview with Ksenia's boyfriend, Chris Van Heerden. Chris is a former international boxing organization welterweight world champion who retired from the sport last year to work full-time on getting Ksenia home. See, he had paid for her to take the trip as a Christmas gift so she could see her family.
Merry Christmas! 12 years in a Russian labor camp. Oh my God, I'm sure he's regretting that.
And he spoke to us on Monday about the charges she faced.
$51. After they took her phone, they sent her back to her family. So they released it to her family and they said, you're not allowed to leave Yekaterinburg. You will hear from us. And we now know within the 3 weeks from January 2nd till January 27th, they investigated every single thing on her cell phone. This is where they came across the Venmo, $51 on Venmo, charged her for treason, funding the enemy state. That's what she was charging for, funding the enemy state, buying weapons.
I'm sorry. I said 11:05 sharp. Okay, if you want to know why I started at 11 o'clock, it's because tonight, even though it's not the night before Passover, it's 2 nights before Passover, but this year, because Passover comes, regularly, it's a Jew thing, okay? It's a Jew thing, okay? I can say it. It's a Jew thing. Let me get this out of the way, okay? It's totally a Jew thing why I was late tonight. Number one, there were 2 Jew things which conspired to my lateness. Number one is on the night before Passover, we actually search for bread because we're not allowed to have bread in the house on Passover. And there's a custom that goes back several millennia where Jews would search their houses by candlelight for bread. And that's a custom in my house that we do the night before Passover. Then the next morning, we burn that bread and any other bread that we want to get rid of. That is part of the ritual performance of ridding ourselves of the bread as we come into Passover and celebration and observation of that particular holiday. Now, so you have your bread searching the night before and your bread burning the next day. This year, Passover starts Saturday night. And accordingly, since you can't burn anything on Shabbos on Saturday morning, so instead we search for it Thursday night and then burn it on Friday morning. So tomorrow morning I will be burning my bread. But the search process, which is my family, different families have different ways they engage in the search. In my family, it's an hour-long process, which has to be done after sunset. So that's when I sent out my text. It was right before I started on locals. I notified everyone I was going to be starting late because I knew that this was going to eat an hour into my prep time and I was going to end up starting late. Then after I finished that, I finished finding different topics I wanted to cover tonight, set up my stream, and then I went down and I study every day I study every day with Lady Logic, and I hadn't had a chance to study with her today, where we go through some self-improvement kind of Jewish ethics type of basically inspiring us to work on ourselves to better our own prayer to God. So I do that with her every day for like 15 minutes or so. Today's session ended up running. So I was like, can we please just grab it in now? I want to grab it in after I set the stream. I said, I want to get it done by 11:05. And I got really stuck on a passage in Hebrew that I really had struggled with. So it ended up being 11:15. That's how it all came today. Are you sure it's not due to Utes? That's what happened. Let's get back to Ksenia Carolina.
And if you know, I started laughing and crying in the same time because it was like, if you know my Ksenia, she is the sweetest, kindest person you'll meet. She goes out of her way to do good for people. She hates seeing people hurt. So you can imagine elderly people, young kids without food and water. She would be the first to donate money.
Chris also described the very harsh prison conditions she was facing in Siberia. He told us that while Ksenia is mentally strong, she was signaling in letters that she did not expect to survive the full sentence over there.
She's in a labor camp, right? So she wakes up at 6 a.m. in the morning. She works till 9 p.m. at night. She gets 2 15-minute breaks in between for lunch or coffee break or to brush her teeth or whatever. It's snowing in Siberia, close to where she's held at, close to Siberia. It's snowing, it's freezing cold out there working. There was a moment of her not going to the showers for 2 weeks. But again, Ksenia, knowing her, she would write to me and she go, babe, your mom, her mother would send her some wipes and stuff. And she was like, I would use the toilet water to clean myself. She's got problems with her legs, and this worries me. This really worries me. She's now all of a sudden she's got leg pain. She's got some big veins popping out on her legs from all the standing. She's explaining to me in the letters how she's peeling thousands and thousands of potatoes every day. But you only get a few seconds. There's people yelling and swearing at you all day, and you got to rush. And then you got to put the potatoes in the boiling water. So she's got blisters on her hand from the boiling water burning her hands. And she's getting basically no attention. Like it's harsh. It is.
Do you think she could do 12 years in these conditions?
No, she cannot.
On our show, Chris also sent this message directly to President Trump.
I'm on your show, Megan, because I know President Trump has a lot of respect for you. I've watched his interviews. He watches your shows. He takes note to what you say. And I'm on you, and I'm begging. I'm not a begging man, but I'm begging for this girl's life. It is not looking good for her. And if there's somebody that can bring Ksenia back, it's President Trump. I know it. Mm-hmm. She's already given up. She's already 90% given up. But we will not give up on her. I will not give up on her. You know, I feel like I'm reliving
President Trump got
my
Mark Vogel
dad's
home,
experience.
and I believe he could get Ksenia home too. Message received. And today, for the second time since the start of his second term, President Trump has returned an American from Russian captivity. This is incredible. You heard me mention it there. In February, he brought home American schoolteacher Mark Vogel. I can't believe it. We were all just talking about her. We felt totally hopeless a matter of hours ago. And look at this exclusive photo that we have received. This is Ksenia today. Look at this.
Let's face it. I mean, Megan's not saying it. I mean, she's implying it a little bit, but I'll say it. This is Megyn Kelly. This is Megyn Kelly. She's a social media influencer who saved this woman's life. Because I'll tell you right now, it probably wasn't even on Trump's radar until people probably started tagging his staff and his team about how they need to get on saving Ksenia Carolina. So that's Megyn Kelly and Trump. Obviously, Trump is the one who gets her home. but the ability to raise up the cry on behalf of Ksenia and what she did there was just remarkable. And yeah, God bless Megyn Kelly for saving her life, for saving Ksenia's life.
Holding the American flag on the flight back to the United States. Oh my gosh, this is wonderful. She has the green sweatshirt on. Her father describing to the Daily Mail what happened when Ksenia called him, saying, quote, "The first seconds of our chat were all pure emotion. I cannot imagine what we were saying. It was like one explosion of happiness." And a short time ago, we received this statement from Chris. He says, "I'm overjoyed to hear that the love of my life, Ksenia, is on her way home from wrongful detention in Russia. She's endured a nightmare for 15 months, and I cannot wait to hold her." He thanked everybody who has helped bring attention to this story. He mentioned them on the show the other day as well. In particular, Peter Berg. You remember the guy behind the Friday Night Lights series? And, oh God, he's done so much in Hollywood. But trying to remember, he's got some connection to Peter Berg. But, I think it might be through his boxing. In any event, he also thanked Dana White, who's been advocating for Ksenia. A lot of people have taken up this cause. It's amazing. It worked. Can I just tell you something else? Well, I'll bring this up when I bring Stu on. But listen, Ksenia is going to go to a military hospital when she's back on U.S. soil. And listen, we send her our love and our prayers. And Chris as well. God bless you. What a beautiful love story. I expect to be invited to the wedding. It's unbelievable. And congratulations to Team Trump. Hats off to you. Wow.
Indeed.
Tariff wars.
So there you go. There you go. What a remarkably heartwarming story. Such a great story. And it's another win for President Trump, where he seems to rack up a lot of these wins. He seems to rack them up without even trying. He's that good. He's that good. Should we go through some more wins of his? I got more wins. I got other stories also. I got a whole bunch of stories. We'll save his other wins for later in the show. Is it also a Jew thing to change the day in preparation for Passover? I mean, I'm Catholic, so I get weird religious practices. Jewish law says that when Passover starts on Saturday night, you're supposed to do it Thursday night. So it's out of deference to the Sabbath. Chag Sameach, brother. Thank you. Thank you so much. As I was preparing the Seder today with Mom, I found a very crispy afikoman still hidden in the table. It's probably Chag Sameach to you too. Thank you. Wow, very crispy afikoman. Afikoman is matzah, but yeah. All right. All right. There's a whole bunch of stories that I was like, I don't even know where to go first with this. I have so many different stories I want to break down for you today before I start getting into like the little bit of like the deeper kind of stuff. So let's break this down one by one. This will give people a chance to pop on in here, flesh everything out. Those of you in Rumble who might have started a couple minutes late, I caught it right away. I caught it pretty quickly. Sorry that I was a minute or two late. I was a minute or two late on getting you. I don't know why it didn't click off right away, but I probably was doing everything a little bit too rushed there on that. So I'm sorry for that. Let's start off with this story. I have so many different things. This is what I'll break down for you. I got Social Security fraud. I've got election hacking fraud. It's been exposed today. I've got Trump fixing things with respect to our flow. I've got the SAVE Act, and then I want to start getting into Trump's wins. So let's start breaking these down. We're going to start with the $400 million in Social Security fraud. This is just unbelievable.
Unemployment insurance fraud. That trust needs to be whole for the American people. When we need it for who deserves it. That's not what we're seeing in the numbers that we saw last night, again, exposed by our partners at DOJ at the Department of Labor. Since 2020, over $400 million of payments have gone out already. And when you hear these numbers, apparently in the United States, we have over almost 25,000 people who are over 115 years old, who are collecting $59 million that we have sent out to people. Talk about fraudulent behavior. Mr. President, 28,000 people between 1 and 5 years old have collected fraudulent payments.
28,000 people between 1 and 5 years old. If you think that's as bad as it is, people over 115, people between 1 and 5, it's worse. It's, believe it, they found a way to, you're like, how does that even get processed? Like, what happened here? There's a third category, which is somehow even worse.
Payments at the tune of $254 million has gone out. And lastly, 10,000 people who have not been born yet, 15 years into the future.
10,000 people who have not yet been born collecting Social Security. How does that even happen? How does that even happen?
$69 million, and they haven't even been born yet. In one case, they will be born 129 years from now. The United States government sent them $41,000, and they're not born yet. So
they're gonna be, we all eagerly look forward to the year 2154 when they're going to be born. It'll be very exciting.
So, under the Department of Labor, those are the things that we're uncovering. I couldn't be more honored to tell the American people that we're bringing back their dollars and we're saving them and returning them to the United States Treasury.
Unbelievable. They're yelling about Doge going through this. Doge is saving that that Elon's going to be stealing Nana's Social Security. Elon is saving Nana's Social Security. Without Elon and Doge, there is no Social Security 20 years from now. There isn't any. He's saving Nana's Social Security. Stupid folks. So aggravating. So aggravating. Ugh. Whew. He's even having an impact, by the way, on the entire world. Look at the Trump effect in Great Britain. This is awesome. This guy, I don't like, not many British people. I appreciate you clarifying that. Thank you. Unemployment, not so scary. Thank you. Remember, for 20 months. Dang. Soulless Ginger. Thank you. Thank you so much. Should I call you Dawn or Soulless Ginger? I don't know. I assume Soulless Ginger is because you're a redhead. That's what I'm assuming. I'm a bit confused on searching for bread by candlelight. Okay, here we go. Wouldn't it be where you normally keep it, or do you hide slices around the house like yeast or eggs? Jokes aside, happy Passover, Joe. The answer is yes. We actually hide 10 pieces of bread around the house. And there are different families have different ways of doing it. You're supposed to hide 10 pieces of bread around the house and search by candlelight, not by like torchlight. Some people today will use flashlights. The reason you're not supposed to use a torchlight is because you won't search close in corners. You'd be afraid of burning the house down. So traditionally, we search by candlelight. My personal family custom. This is not what all Jews do. Okay, so I'm going to distinguish between. I gave you the general. What I gave you so far is what all Ortho Jews do. We call bedikas chametz, which means searching for chametz. Chametz is things that are like leavened bread, things that have been leavened, like well, I guess wheat products or grain products that have been leavened. Okay, so in my house, meaning my personal custom, which is similar to what I had growing up, because this sort of how you carry it out once you're fulfilling the commandment, how you carry it out is really sort of something you would sort of pass on to your children. So I get from my father, gets from their father, on and on. So, is that the women will hide the bread and the men look for it silently. Like, we're not talking the entire time. And we're basically all going around searching room by room. And my wife and or daughters who hide it basically sit there giggling at us as we get frustrated trying to find these little pieces of bread that are basically be like one in this room, two in that room, and we go searching around by candles. So you see three of us with candles in a dark room, searching like in every corner trying to find bread. That's what it is. Okay. Well, it looks like we now know why they were throwing such a fit about Trump looking at Social Security. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Although this was unemployment, not Social Security. So Yeah. Thank you, Ginger, for correcting me on that. I'm not sure why I got that wrong. I got my wires crossed. Anyway, I wanted to share with you this guy here, the most base British guy you've ever seen. Like, whenever I hear British guy, I'm assuming someone who is going to be stuffy and basically perfectly happy to see some other bloke shagging his wife. That's what I assume. Whenever I think of a proper British, I look at them as like the such utter betas is really the only word I can come up with. I don't really like using that word, but there's no other word. But not this guy. Not this guy. I don't even know. I think he's an MP named Tate who's running to be prime minister in Great Britain. And look, check out this guy.
Watching Trump and the Americans, it has made me even more determined than ever to restore our unique country through a great repeal act when Labour falls at the next election. I don't particularly care if we're liked by the rest of the world.
In case you're wondering, Labour is what, in all of these different parliament countries, Labour is always a reference to the left. That's the Labour Party. It's always like the left party.
I care if we're respected, because right now, Britain is a joke, and it has been for some time. I want the British government to put the British people at the top of the agenda. Yeah! We should make no apologies for that. Learn from Trump. Let's be unapologetically patriotic. Slash tax across.
I am going to start pronouncing that word as patriotic. Patriotic. Unapologetically patriotic.
Let's be unapologetically patriotic. Slash tax across the board. Enforce the border. Deport those with no right to be here. Accept biological reality. Fight back against wokery. Bulldoze nonsensical foreign aid. Eradicate DEI. Deliver sensible infrastructure. Carpet bomb public sector waste. Brutally crack down on crime. And plenty more. Let's make Great Britain great again. Thank you. Thank
you. You probably should say, let's make Britain great again. Right? Let's make Britain. I guess, is it better? Let's make Great Britain great again. Let's make England Great Britain again. Let's make Britain Great Britain again. No, I don't know. Either way, kudos to this guy. Good. I never heard of him before. I don't follow European politics at all on principle. I really don't. But for a few reasons. A, I don't care what they do there. I really don't care what's going on in Europe. And B, it's just too much. It's just too much. I got to have my little slice where I focus on and just really, really wrestle with and understand and leave world politics to people who are living in the world and not in America. So there you go. Well, it looks like we know. Oh, oops, that's the wrong one. Do you have to burn corn, wheat-based booze? So, okay, you guys want me to start answering all these different questions about Passover. We're not allowed to own any bread. We are allowed to. There is a concept of selling our bread, which is a thing that all Orthodox Jews do. So when it comes to things like whiskey or even corn-based, bourbon, yeah. So basically, it's permitted to you sell it for a week to a non-Jew, and then we get it back after a week, after the Passover's over. So that's to answer your question. That's another step in the process in preparing for Passover. If they laugh at you, trick is to tell the women that you're giving up searching for the chametz, and they'll freak out that the house won't be kosher for pizza. Yeah. No, they just have a good time, and they know we're not going to give up. We're not going to give up. There's no way we're giving up. All right, let's get into some more Trump wins. More Trump wins. Here's Hakeem Jeffries embarrassing the hell out of himself. This is all this week. Everything I'm giving to you is news. Everything I'm giving to you. I don't give you old stuff.
Trump promised that he would lower costs, in fact, on day one. But what we've seen under his reckless leadership is that costs aren't going down in America.
All right, I know this says April 3rd. Don't just stop. Just stop.
They're going up. Inflation is going up.
Breaking moments ago, brand new numbers showing inflation fell last month, much better than expected.
So this was actually a drop of 0.1%, negative 0.1%. That's the first time we've seen that since COVID. Year over year, the annual inflation rate was at 2.4%. This was also better than expected and a 6-month low, moving in the right direction.
Trump promised that he would lower costs. In fact, on day.
There you go. There you go. Hakeem Jeffries. They can't help but lose. They just lose every time they lose. Every time. Let's put the great back in Britain. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that sounds right to me. Let's put the great back in Britain. I agree with you on that. Let's put the great back in Britain. Or you can even say, let's put the great back in Great Britain. I think that works too. I think either way works. All right. If you're old enough, or you're someone who's into, vintage TV, and I've watched Seinfeld, and you're someone who's a bit of a Seinfeld aficionado, you may recall there was an episode where they spent a great deal of time. The theme of the episode was how they had no water flow. They had water, but their showers basically had been flowing too low, not enough water pressure. And the whole joke was about how they all had flattened hair because they couldn't rinse the shampoo out of their hair and stuff. And an ongoing thing about how they were they treated like the getting good shower heads as if trying to buy narcotics, like they were buying in the back of a van, shower heads and stuff like that. This that I had here, this clip that I wanted to share with you, is a lengthy Seinfeld, is basically putting together a little montage from that episode where they all didn't have their water flow. But it's setting up about how Trump has been dealing with something that I remember my mother, rest her soul, introducing me to, which is the low flow toilets. Let me tell you something, okay? One of the first, I'm pretty sure the very first conservationists back in the days when it was called global warming, not climate change, they introduced this comment, this perspective, this new need we had for low flow toilets, which was the stupidest thing in the world, because what it meant was, instead of actually flushing once and actually having everything just whoosh, right on out, you just had to flush and flush and flush. Oh, wait for it to fill. Flush, flush, flush over and over again. And way more water. It's not even, it was such a stupid concept from its inception. From the moment that came out, it was dumb, stupid, ridiculous, pointless. And I felt it was almost like it was a way of trying to test society. Are you willing to put up with toilets that don't flush? Are you willing to put up with that? It's almost like they were testing us. And that's 30 years ago. I remember when my mother got a new toilet and I was just like, what the hell is this? Mom, what is this? What's happening here? She's like, oh, it's this new conservation thing in order to save water that they have to have Now, I'll tell you this. What does make sense to me, there are some toilets out there which have two buttons. So one for a lesser flush, one for a greater flush. As long as the greater flush is sufficient to basically make sure that whatever's in that bowl is definitely not going to be there by the time that whole flushing process goes down, we're good. I have no problem with you. And then if you tell me look, sometimes, let's say you're just dealing with a fluid change, you don't need to have a massive flow of water in there. You want to have a lesser flush button for that. And they got the little, they have the 1 versus the 2, and it's for 1 versus 2. So that's, and you're telling me that you want to just, have a recycling of the water with maybe less pressure. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm not I'm not trying to just waste for the purpose of wasting. No, I'm totally fine with saying let's have a lower flush pressure for, when you go to the urinal, You don't need to have as much water as when you're going as when you have like a whole sit down. If you're not getting rid of tissues and any other type of waste in there, it's obviously much less pressure that you need. But this concept, which is basically something I've been living with, listen, look at me. 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 See this? You could see by my eyes. Look. You see by my eyes? You see? I'm getting crow's feet, okay? I got gray hair. I'm an old man. I understand that. I'm an old man. That means a couple of things. Number one, I got much less patience for having to flush the toilet 4 times. Number two is I've been living more than half my life under this low flush tyranny. That's what my life has been saddled with. Living more than half my life in this low flush tyranny, because this Seinfeld episode is 29 years old, and it was a funny joke back then, and that was relatively new after this concept came out. For decades and decades, society has been plagued by the low flush issue, not to mention the low water pressure issue, and what they do in California and New York. Oh my god, half my life I've spent basically trying to get around this issue of low water pressure. And who knew that along comes our hero to shore, who basically says, no more. All right, I don't need to get copyright by NBC and their AC.
Next up, sir, we have a series of executive orders and a memorandum all relating to deregulation, which has obviously been a major priority of your administration. The first of these is an executive order. The Biden administration launched what you've called a war on showers. They had certain regulations.
And the Biden administration makes sense that they would start a war on showers because so many of their voters don't shower. So it makes sense. And I don't think it has anything to do with saving the earth, the environment. Trust me. I don't think it's got anything to do with global. I think it's a personal choice. But yeah, so the Biden administration basically outlawed showers.
Basically killed the water pressure of showers and other water appliances.
You can say it. Go ahead.
He's baiting. He's like, showers and other water appliances. He didn't want to say toilets. And Trump knew it. And Trump, awesome dude that he is, is like, no, well, what are you trying to say? Say it. What are you trying to say?
What are the appliances?
I mean, it's everything, sir.
Dishwashers,
toilets, sinks. But the shower heads are
There's no water. You don't get water. It's ridiculous.
So with this executive order, we're effectively going to be reversing that set of regulations to ensure that Americans have choice in the consumer market.
Kids, you don't know what it used to be like, okay? You're used to pushing a thing and you hear that kind of sound. Like that's it. That's like the flush. No, that's not what it should be. It should be sounding like they are hosing down an elephant who was rolling around the mud. Like this is a sort of high pressure. This is what every toilet used to be. You would hear like a when you used to go to the toilet. I feel bad. I feel bad for millennials. I feel bad for this younger generation. They don't even know. You don't know how bad it is because you grow up in it and you think, oh, that's what flushing is. None of my kids know what it actually is to really flush a toilet. And I feel for them. I really do, because they think that's it. No, it should be like a There should be like back spray coming up. That's what the porcelain throne should just be like. It should just be like it's a fountain of water. It should practically be like almost like a bidet if you're sitting down. That's what a good flush is. Okay, that's what a real flush is. Kids today, they don't know. They think it's just like a little like a bucket of water. Just no. That's not flushing a toilet. It isn't. It doesn't. Not to mention dishwashers. Things aren't getting clean. It's not. I remember. I remember what it was. I do. Well, anyway, Trump's bringing that back.
If they want a low flow shower head, they can buy one. If they want a real deal shower
They
head,
Nobody wants
to have the ability to get one.
You buy a new house, you pay a lot of money, and the developers, you're not allowed to do anything more. They put restrictors on. They used to have a restrictor where you could take it out, but now they weld it in. And you take a shower or wash your hands, whatever you do, including dishwashers where no water comes out. But you wash your hands, and in my case, I like to take a nice shower to take care of my beautiful hair. And I have to stand under the shower for 15 minutes till it gets wet. It comes out drip, drip, drip. It's ridiculous. And what you do is you end up washing your hands 5 times longer. So it's the same water. And we're going to open it up so that people can live, and we're going to hopefully have Congress approve it so it's memorialized. We're going to try and get all of these things, including straws, a little thing like straws. We did straws a month ago where the paper straws were melting. They were dissolving. They weren't working well. And we went back to the plastic straws. We're going to get Congress to memorialize just about everything we've done here because most of it's common sense. But the water is horrible. When you go into anytime you see a new faucet.
Let me tell you, you fancy schmancy Alaskans who got all your it's like, oh yeah, we'll just we're perfectly happy just flushing a 40-gallon aquarium every time we use the bathroom. I do envy you. Yes, I do because life is so much simpler. You flush the toilet, you walk out, you're done. Flush the toilet, you're washing your hands, it's still going when you walk out. This is all, that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Now, it's like if you just walk out, it's like a 50% chance that you left tons of residue behind. That's the reality. You got to actually just sit there and inspect. Oh, did it go? Are we done? Are we done? Is this something that's presentable? Is this something I'm not going to be embarrassed if someone walks in here after me? Yeah, that's what it is now. Did it take? Did it take? did the flush take or not? It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Trump understands the people.
It's going to be a long wash of the hands. And so we're changing. It's a big deal. I did it in the first administration. Biden came in his first week, and he had no idea what he was doing, but somebody told him. In his first week, he put the restrictions on all the bathroom utilities, even in areas that have so much water, they don't know what to do with it. You see those areas all the time with the flooding. So we're doing that, and we're going to get all of the things that you've seen. I think we set a record. We're up to almost 200 and 500 amendments. Nobody's ever done that many. We're going to get them approved by Congress so they're memorialized. And we look forward to doing that. It's very important. And Congress is going to start working on it as soon as we get the big, beautiful deal done. The big, beautiful deal is important. The biggest tax cuts in the history of our country. That's important.
That and our toilets. There you go. There you go. Make water pressure great again. Make flushing great again. Oh, that's our man. That's our man. No issue is too big or too little.
You take a good shower. We rate the signatures. That was a 10. That's why.
All right. 10 out of 10. There you go. There you go. And Barb Loves Last is saying all this talk about flushing now makes me have to go to the toilet. And Santiago Space Atlas said people really wanted to save water. We'd all have urinals in our bathrooms, but they're not pretty. So yep. All right. So that's another chalk up another win for Trump. We should spend a moment or two talking about the SAVE Act. SAVE Act, which managed to pass through Congress. Now we just need to get it to pass through. Now we just need to get through the Senate, which that's going to be a tougher road to hoe because I have a feeling they're going to need 60 senators, and I don't know if we're going to get it. But there are two acts that the House managed to pass, inspired by President Trump, no doubt. You have the SAVE Act, and you also have the No Rogue Judges. I'll save the No Rogue Judges for later because that really ties into the other issue. So we'll save that for later. But the SAVE Act that they managed to pass Sponsor. Wait, this was sponsored by Senator Mike Lee. That's Senate. It's in the House. Oh, the House passed it. The SAVE Act is designed to mandate that people, when they are registering to vote, must show proof of U.S. citizenship. You can do it via, this is how you do it. Either you have a form of identification issued consistent with requirements of the Real ID Act of 2005 that indicates the applicant is a citizen of the United States. You can use a valid U.S. passport. You can use the applicant's official U.S. military identification card together with the U.S. military record of service showing the applicant's place of birth was in the United States. You can have a valid government-issued photo identification issued by federal, state, or tribal government showing that the applicant's place of birth was in the United States. A valid government-issued photo identification card issued by federal, state, tribal government, or other described in paragraphs 1 through 4, but only present together with one or more of the following. Certified birth certificate issued by a state, a unit of local government, and a state or tribal government. I'm going to tell you something. If Trump manages to kill birthright citizenship, that's not going to work. That's not going to work 18 years from now. We'll deal with that then. In that case, you have these other measures. But the idea being that you cannot vote in our elections. You cannot register to vote in our elections unless you can prove that you're a U.S. citizen. This should be something which is pretty basic. I'm going to tell you right now, assuming the SAVE Act does pass, this is something that is likely, more likely than most bills, to most statutes, to go straight to the Supreme Court, or get fast-tracked to the Supreme Court. Because what you have here, the issue that you have here is it's federal elections, but states under the Constitution have plenary authority as to how they control their elections. So can now the federal government dictate that states that are engaged in a registration process must ensure that the registrant is a U.S. citizen or not? Many states, as you know, and many cities allow people who are not U.S. residents to vote in their local elections, which I think is as un-American as a sickle and hammer. But that is the reality. And if you're only enabling them to register to vote, but by proving their birthright citizenship, or they are citizens or naturalized, proving that they're citizens of the United States, in that case now, that's obviously going to preclude these visitors to our nation, whether they are legal or illegal, from voting in their state and local elections. Now, I personally believe that to be a great thing. However, I would recognize that the federal government is, under the Constitution, powerless to impact this. Now, there's an obvious solution to this, which is states can register someone to vote federally and have a separate registration process, if they're so inclined, for their state votes. And that's something they could do. Nothing is stopping them from doing that. And I do think that if this does pass, which I don't know that it will, but if it does pass, I do think that this will likely survive scrutiny, because this is not something they're going to try and say that this is the question is what level scrutiny it's going to have. They're going to try and say it's racist or it's misogynistic or whatever. I don't think it qualifies as that. The reason that I think they'll struggle to say that it qualifies as something that's remotely racist is because there's nothing here which is designed. I don't think it's having a greater impact on one race or another having to prove your citizenship. It would apply to British people, French people. It applies to anyone who's here. So, and the right to maintain elections that are actually having only legal voters vote in the federal elections seems to be an interest of that. It would certainly pass a rational basis test. And I don't. Now, the left has already raised a specific argument. What is the specific argument that the left has been raising on this? They're screaming and crying, screaming and like lunatics. And it's the biggest lunatics in the House who are doing the loudest screaming, as you would expect. So your Jasmine Crockett's and your Eric Swalwells are out there screaming that this is a punishment to 70 million American women, because their birth certificate is not going to show their married name. And now they're not going to be able to vote, which is the stupidest thing imaginable. It's the stupidest thing, and it's such an obvious lie, first and foremost, because this only would apply to people registering in the future. So it wouldn't apply to all the married women who already are registered. They still would remain registered. That's first and foremost. Second of all, how do married women get a passport? You're able to prove when you had a name change. It might cost $100, $130 to change your passport. That's true. I actually looked up the fee for that. Changing your name on your passport when a woman gets married, it's $130. I actually had a back and forth exchange with someone on X who was basically saying, well, why should women have to bear the cost of the name change? And my response to her was, my wife, when she changed her name, she did not bear that cost. We bore that cost. That was a cost that both of us shared, because that's just how a healthy relationship is. That she's changing her name because she's getting married. It makes sense that I'm not marrying a roommate. I'm marrying my wife. And the purpose of her changing her name, she's coming under my house here, and our expenses and our income are shared. So, yeah, that when she's got to go for that, that's going to come from a joint bank account that we both share. So, no, this is not something that women have to suffer through alone when they get married. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all. The whole reason you're having the name change is because you just got married. We just got married. You should be having a joint bank account. This is not an expense that women have to bear alone. It's the stupidest. It's like they don't think through for a second what they're arguing. Anyhow, we need better election integrity. That's for sure. We need to do everything we can to ensure that only legal people are voting. And if you think about election integrity, Tulsi Gabbard came out today and announced that we have issues with our election integrity that was recently discovered.
I've got a long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best of the best going after this. Election integrity being one of them. We have evidence of how these electronic voting systems have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time, and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of the votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections.
What? What? Didn't we have all these lawsuits going on since 2021 about the capacity for these machines to be hacked? And we kept being told over and over again, no. The minion says it's impossible to hack, can't be hacked. No one can hack it. Fox paying off tens of millions of dollars and firing Tucker Carlson because look at all these claims here that it's hackable when it's not at all hackable. What are you talking about? Why would anyone say it's hackable? It's unbelievable. You want to talk about how hackable it is? If you want to know how hackable these things are, you want to know the best source for figuring out whether or not our online elections are hackable? You know who knows better than anyone else whether or not they're hackable? Democrats.
Virginia just stopped using touchscreen computer voting because it's so vulnerable.
Right.
We need to look at all the voting machines. Every Secretary of State needs to be, assisted in making sure that they are not being hacked and attacked.
I continue to think that our voting machines are too vulnerable.
Researchers have repeatedly demonstrated that ballot recording machines and other voting systems are susceptible to tampering.
Even hackers with limited prior knowledge, tools, and resources are able to breach voting machines in a matter of minutes.
In 2018, electronic voting machines in Georgia and Texas deleted votes for certain candidates or switched votes from one candidate to another.
The biggest seller of voting machines is doing something that violates Cybersecurity 101, directing that you install remote access software, which would make a machine like that, a magnet for fraudsters and hackers.
These voting machines can be hacked quite easily.
You could easily hack into them. It makes it seem like all these states are doing different things, but in fact, 3 companies are controlling this.
It is the individual voting machines that pose some of the greatest risks.
There are a lot of states that are dealing with antiquated machines.
right? Which are vulnerable to being hacked.
Workers were able to easily hack into an electronic voting machine. It was possible to switch votes.
43% of American voters use voting machines that researchers have found have serious security flaws, including backdoors.
We know how vulnerable now our systems were. I know the hackathon that took place last year, where virtually every machine was broken into fairly quickly.
I actually held a demonstration for my colleagues here at the Capitol, where we brought in folks who, before our eyes, hacked election machines, those that are being used in many states.
Aging systems also frequently rely on unsupported software like Windows XP in 2000, which may not receive regular security patches and are thus more vulnerable to the latest methods of cyber attack.
In a close presidential election, they just need to hack one swing state, or maybe one or two, or maybe just a few counties in one swing state.
I'm very concerned that you could have a hack that finally went through. You have 21 states that were hacked into. They didn't find out about it for a year.
Right now, we have over a dozen states that either don't have any backup paper ballots or only have them partially. Do you think that our adversaries don't know what those states are?
And this goes on for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I was like, I'm not sitting through 20 minutes. I wouldn't put you through 20 minutes of this, but 20 minutes of these one Democrat after another going on and on and on. 20 minutes. 20 minutes. We're not going to, we're done. We're not. 2.5 minutes was more than enough. As we'd say, Yetzi sein. We're good. We're good. we don't need any more. So yeah. Everyone knows that when you're relying on machines, it's not trustworthy. I've said this probably no fewer than a dozen times, and I will almost certainly say it a dozen more. It's not simply having elections that are secure, that have integrity, but there must be transparency about there being integrity. Otherwise, whatever degree of democracy you're in favor of, which I am in favor of democracy to some degree, as long as it's girded by very firm constitutional place guards to make sure that the minority is not tyrannized by the majority. So in that setting, like we are blessed to have as established by our framers, that I'm very much in favor of that type of democracy, but it's not a democracy if it's a test of who can cheat best. That is not any sort of democracy. That is just that's a joke. That's Russia and their elections where Putin wins every 10 years. Where it's not a matter of who gets the votes, it's a matter of who counts the votes. That's not democracy. So the left knows it. They know it as well as anyone else. They've been screaming about it longer than anyone else. And when Trump comes out there with a proposal to have only paper machines, I can assure you it's those very same leftists, the Amy Klobuchars of the world, the Adam Schiffs of the world, the Zoe Lofgrens, and they're going to come out there saying, oh, no, it's against democracy. You're trying to suppress the votes, or some other stupidity. I can assure you of that, because they just talk out of both sides of their mouths. They don't really care about. They don't care about what's really happening. I mentioned how there's I was going to tell you about some fraud and some waste. This one blew my mind. This one. I'm just gonna let you read it. I can't. I'm just gonna let you read this yourself. You read it. So why don't you read it out loud? Read it for the audience. I don't hear you. All right, that experiment didn't work. The NIH has been bankrolling. Yeah, our NIH has been bankrolling a nonprofit that directly messages hundreds of minors via their cell phones about toys, toys, lesbian sex, and trans sex, while discouraging the kids from telling their parents about it. In a story by Hannah Grossman. First, the Center for Innovative Public Health uses social media to solicit hundreds of minors between 14 and 16 directly for its various LGBT ed programs. On social media, Cypher programs discuss having threesome and being pansexual. Then Cypher administrators proceed to ask children they advertise to via social media about their sex lives, 14 to 16-year-olds. For example, kids are asked about their attraction and whether they've ever had sex with a trans guy or trans girl. Center for Innovative Public Health Research. Cypher then proceeds to send these children hundreds of text messages over the course of 2 to 3 months about sex, while explicitly stating they will not obtain parental consent before doing so. Its lesbian sex education program, for example, encouraged teen girls to be their sexy selves, inform them about toys and the different types of sex and ways to increase pleasure. Oh, look at this from Coral. Not only did public school not teach me about lesbian sex when I started going to school online, they didn't teach it either. This program taught me everything. So when I met my current girlfriend, I was ready. And girl to girl, we talked about a lot of different things, including what healthy relationships look like, what unhealthy relationships look like, different types of sex and ways to increase pleasure. Lube and toys. It's sick. Head of the federally backed nonprofit Michael Ybarra discusses educating minors about using toys without parental knowledge.
We will ask, okay, so what happens if somebody comes into the room and sees words like penis and sex toys on your screen, on your computer screen or on your phone? What if it's your mom? And if during this conversation, they begin to say things like, well, gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I would be safe in that way. I think my mom might actually be really upset. You need to have a plan to, sort of shore up any safety issues that are assumed to be there if parents. We will ask, okay, so what happens if somebody.
Unbelievable. Ybarra has also said the purpose of the transgender sex ed program was to obtain information from children, quote, about when and why and where trans kids are choosing to have sex. Ybarra then uses the information solicited from teens during the sex ed programs for her published research. In sum, federal government has been funding a researcher's curiosity about how children are having sex while sending them detailed instructions, all without parental knowledge. Wow. It's awful. These people should be thrown in prison. Awful. Our society has become like I hesitate before using the phrase. It's not a den of iniquity; it's a mansion of iniquity. It's a mansion. It's a mansion of self-destructive behavior. This is just unbelievable. This is what we're funding. We're funding having adults talk to kids and about changing their bodies and how to pleasure themselves. 14-year-olds. How is this not something that this should have you outraged? This is just we're funding this. $22 million in government grants. $22 million this lunatic got instead of a life sentence, which is what she should have been getting. How many lives has she destroyed? Awful. Get your kids out of public school. I'm telling you now. I'm warning you now. Get them out. Ugh, gosh. All right. Let's move from that on to something a little bit happier. Because that story kind of burst my bubble. And that's the thing. You're not alone. You're not alone. I'm sorry. At least now it'll likely be stopped. Well, let me give you a heartening story. You want to be heartened? I just gave you a very disheartening story. Let me give you a heartening story. This one will make you feel better. I told you I had a lot. I had so many different. I was like, I got so many things I want to spend like 5 minutes on. I was like, I can't list them all. Let me just say and more. When I say and more, just in the future, when you see that I have like a thumbnail, I say and more. What that almost certainly means is that I have like somewhere between 3 and 10 different 3 to 5 minute stories that I'm like, I don't know how to list this. I'm not making my show about it, but that's why it's more. It's just more. So when you see that, just know I have a whole bunch of these little nuggets that I want to share with you. I work IT for a school district. This is why I'm for cameras in the classroom that parents can go online and see what these teachers are doing. We should have cameras everywhere. I mean, we probably have like 1 billion cell phones for 300 million people in this country. Every one of them has a camera. Like how it is that we don't have cameras everywhere, just everywhere, all the time. I'd be totally fine with it. Anywhere where people are interacting in a way that they have a capacity, they're expected to interact with minors or people, or the same way we have it on cops. It's a very simple thing. In courtrooms, anywhere where they're impacting and affecting others in ways that they're directed to affect others. No reason not to have them. They're so cheap today. You know, when I was a kid, camera was a big deal. But now it's nothing. Tell me what percent of those that control Hollywood are Jewish, and it isn't the kind of stuff against religion. So why is that they promote it? We need to deal with the entertainment industry. I'll tell you why. Because to the extent, and it's been a while since I explained the mindset of an irreligious Jew. Okay, I'm gonna. You raise this whole issue as far as like Jews and who they are, and well, I guess the role that they might have in influencing society. So I need you to understand that the reason you agree with me about so much and you disagree with so many, and you probably find that politically you disagree with so many Jews, as I disagree with them, and I can't stand so many of them based on their politics, is because you need to understand the difference between a God-fearing Jew and someone who's not. You need to understand the difference between someone who is Torah observant and people who resent Torah and hate it and hate everything about religious life because it makes them feel uncomfortable because they know that they have no inclination to actually observe Torah. So the difference is, and I'm not saying that there's certainly far too many embarrassing people who appear to be Torah observant who will go off and do things occasion that are terrible. But they tend to be the exception to the rule rather than the rule themselves. Let's talk about like the big Jewish names you've heard. It could be name a Jewish politician. Virtually any one of them. Virtually any one of them. They're going to be an irreligious Jew. Doesn't matter if it's Bernie Sanders or Goldman or whomever. There have been countless who are irreligious, countless irreligious Jews who are very active politically. There have been countless irreligious Jews who you'll hear of, like Soros or whomever, who that guy is just evil beyond comprehension. I mean, he was evil even in his youth. Like that guy was like literally a capo who would raid Jewish homes and tell the Nazis where other Jews were when he was in Europe in World War II, and helped them steal Jewish valuables. Like that guy is just he's like a demon that possesses that guy. But what I want you to understand about the differences and why it is that so many Jews get involved in the political end of things and end up going off into like this crazy type of direction. So it starts with this. You need to understand that first and foremost, one of the most amazing things about this country is that the system works. It works very, very well. The system that we have here, the American system we have for developing the individual, works. What is the American dream that we always had? What was the plan that was well understood in the 50s and basically started losing its way during the period of the civil rights? It was, if you come to America, it's a land of opportunity. If you work hard and you're somewhat intelligent and you actually, diligent about doing what you do, go out, get a good education, work your tail off, you're going to be better off than your parents were. That was the American dream. And it worked really well. You see it with so many different cultures. It worked for the Chinese, it's worked for the Indians, and it worked for the Jews who came here, where they came here and they had a culture of work your tail off in school, do well, and then you're going to be able to, and you'll be successful. As it happens, Jordan Peterson talks about how Ashkenazic Jews, those are your Western European and Eastern. It's basically your more northern Jews as opposed to ones who lived in Spain or ones who lived in the Middle East. Those are Sephardic Jews. Okay, so Ashkenazic Jews, and you could say it's genetics because we tended not to intermarry for 1,500 years. So that they happen to be blessed with a relatively high IQ. Jordan Peterson, I can show you a 20-minute clip where he breaks down. He says no one understands why, but the median IQ for Ashkenazic Jews is 115, whereas for the rest of society it's 100. And the reason, and when you end up
Trump and the Americans, it has made me even more determined than ever to restore our unique country through a great repeal act when Labour falls at the next.
I apologize for that. So what he explains, and he goes through a whole analogy where he talks about how when you want to look at people who are in prison. So in his explanation he explains that prison, there's a very high correlation between people who have a tendency towards violent anger and people who end up in prison. And if you look at a bell curve, you can sort of look at a bell curve and you can ask yourself a question. Why is it that there are so many more men in prison than women? Prisons are 90% male. Is it that our prison system is designed to punish men more than women? Obviously not. The answer to that question is because there's actually a mean distribution. If you look at the mean distribution of how
unemployment insurance fraud. That trust needs to be whole for the American people.
Sorry about that. I don't know why this thing keeps popping off on me. Let me pop that out for now. So at least if it pops up, you won't hear it. Okay. So as he's explaining with respect to our prison system, So he says, if you measure someone's hostility, and you measure hostility for men, and then you measure the hostility for women, you will find that the yardstick that you're going to use to measure hostility, you're going to have a bell curve of all the women out there. Some are really never hostile, some are much more hostile, and then you have a mean in the middle. That's what they call a bell curve in statistics, meaning you have a chart between, like, what percentage of women are A, and then how violent are they, and you're going to end up seeing a bell curve where, when you want to get to how the most violent people on this side of the curve versus the least violent, you're going to see that most people are towards the middle. The majority of people are towards the middle. But as far as, there are going to be some who are much more violent than other women, and there are going to be some who are much less violent than most women. But if you actually look at and compare that bell curve to a bell curve for men, and you measure the hostility levels of men, you're going to find another bell curve, but the bell curve is going to be like a standard deviation further over towards being more hostile, meaning that we are by nature more hostile. So your average man is by nature going to be more hostile than your average woman. But the average man or the average woman, neither of those are ending up in prison. What ends up happening is it's the most violent ones. The most violent ones are the ones who end up in prison for engaging in very hostile type of conduct, because they're the ones who are the real crazies. So if you want to say that, okay, let's look at overall in society, what percentage of society has really crazy hostile level people, you're going to find that when you get to the end of the crazies and you have that overlap there of the two bell curves for men and women, since men are already starting a full standard deviation towards more hostility, now when we look at the top 5% of the most hostile ones throughout society, you're going to find that 9 out of 10 of them are going to end up being men rather than women. And that's why you had that disparity, because we tend that the average man is going to be more hostile than the average woman. So when you have the craziest of the craziest, a lot more of the average men or less hostile than normal men are going to end up being amongst the most hostile people in society. So that's why our prison system is like that. So he said, now when it comes to success, this is all from Jordan Peterson. I can find the clip if you want. He said, when it comes to success, there is no greater measure of likelihood of success than IQ. And he actually, when he says this, he says it's scary to like mention this because people turn this into some sort of anti-Semitic thing. I didn't take it as being remotely anti-Semitic. He said, for one reason or another, that Ashkenazic Jews have a higher IQ mean. So bell curve of society is going to have in the center there, it's going to be an average IQ of 100, whereas for Ashkenazic Jews, it's at 115. So, because we want to look at the most successful people, the biggest, most successful people, you're going to have them be, and you're going to end up having them over where you're starting with a standard deviation further over. We want to see, okay, well, how many people do we have who have an IQ of over 140, 150, 160? So if you're starting that your mean is a full standard deviation towards more intelligent, you're going to have a lot more people in there, which is why. So now if you ask yourself as far as the success of Jews in America, so that's where you can see reflections of that outside of the money. Put money aside for a minute. Just throw that in this on the side. If you just look at Nobel Prizes, no one's sitting there saying let's give more Nobel Prizes to Jews. There's no like, oh, let's give them to let's make sure we start doling them out to Jews. But there's a much higher level of a much higher percentage of Jews than, Jews are 1% of the population, and yet I think something like 20% of Nobel Prizes have gone to Jews. Because what happens is if you're starting a standard deviation higher over, which is what Jordan Peterson says is where Ashkenazic Jews measure at. And then you build into that you have the American system, which says, hey, the more success you have, the harder you work, and the smarter you are, the more likely you are to have success. And you start putting that all together. It's not remotely surprising that Jews are going to have money, and money starts becoming something you pass down to your children. So now you have these irreligious Jews who are sitting there, who basically have been amassing fortunes for 100 years in this country, 75 years, 100 years, like literally, like there was a mass immigration here starting, I guess, in the 20th century, and just more and more moving in here. And now when they work hard, the American dream works, they work their tail off, and they end up having success, and they pass their money on to their children. But you know what happens if you end up being the product of someone who's successful, and you get money handed to you? You might turn it into your own objective of trying to get money, or a lot of people will try to do things for others because they sort of feel a void, because they feel as if they haven't done anything. They feel very unaccomplished. If you're the child of a wealthy person and you don't actually do anything to noticeable, you feel as if your life doesn't have any meaning. Now, one way of dealing with that is you turn toward God and you develop a relationship with God. So once you have a relationship with God, you basically now that becomes a major focus of what your existence is. I'm going to tell you that in my house, and I'm blessed that in my family, our time and investment towards making sure that we are proper servants of God is the overarching drive in our lives. I come here and I deal on social media and I deal with people who don't know very much about Judaism. This is what I do for work. When I'm not engaged in work, I'm not often in like party land. Like most of the time, like most other religious Jews, it's like developing my relationship with God, whether it could be like Torah study or it could be with like helping others. But basically that's what our function is. And that gives meaning, and that gives purpose, that gives objective, that gives you like a sense of reality, that gives you a sense of purpose, that gives you happiness, that gives you something where you feel as if there's a reason that I'm here, not just to like enjoy the fruits of the world, but it actually gives you a sense of fulfillment, a sense of pride. But what happens if you grow up in a home where they reject God? If anything, they resent God, hate God. Now you don't have that. So now you're basically growing up in a society. Now you're growing up in a situation where you don't have any real purpose. You have no objectives. You have no satisfaction, and you have a deep self-hatred because there's a certain resentment you have toward God, and you feel miserable in your existence. What do? How do you find some way of securing some sense of happiness? So what many of them end up doing is either trying to prove themselves by building greater and greater and greater wealth, and others try to go out and into like fixing the world and taking whatever steps they can to fix the world. And they start developing an elitist perspective of like the masses are stupid and we need to help take care of them. This group from society, they're incapable of looking out for themselves, so we need to start engaging in charities. And yeah, if we happen to like also get rich off of it, that's a good thing too. Because there's no guardrail other than like what the government tells you, because you don't have a God to answer to, because the only God you have is yourself. So you don't have anything to answer to on that score. And all you start trying to do is try and find some way to fill that vacuum of emptiness that is that's plaguing you since you became aware and cognizant of your own utter insignificance, which is usually during your teen years, that you're basically not going to accomplish anything memorable. So that's what ends up. So that's why what ends up happening is with so many of these irreligious Jews, they end up becoming crazy leftists. That and the fact that historically, if you go back a century and a half, I did a locals where I went into this in far more depth. You go into like the whole Marxism thing and how it is that the irreligious Jews who were looking to spurn God ended up ultimately latching on to Marxism communism because they were so exhausted from being beaten and pummeled to death that they were doing anything they can to try and fit in with society rather than literally being hunted for their lives or being raided by Cossacks or whatever or Russians. It didn't matter where you were basically on the run as a society. So that's why Jews ended up becoming this way. So now today's irreligious Jew is trying to find new and inventive ways that they can try and make society better. They're going to be under the false delusion that they know better than history, than what basic human psychology says, or what God says. And they're basically saying, oh, you know what, we can make this person a happier place, and I'm so much better. They feel empty inside. They feel like terribly, terribly empty inside. So you know how I can feel better about myself? If I can be the one who's standing up and looking out for that little kid who's confused about their sexuality and help them embrace who they really are, where they really have some sort of dysmorphia about their sexuality. Or I can help that little kid over there who's been robbing all his friends because he's part of a minority, and I can look out for him in ways that no one else has, because they're desperately trying to kill this beast that is roaring within them, which basically tells them that they're insignificant and unaccomplished and have no meaning or purpose to their very existence. That's what ends up happening. So that's why I'm not surprised that they promote this kind of stuff, because they feel like I know better than everyone else, and they in their heart of hearts they think they're doing well. They think they're meaning well, and they'll disregard what actuality says, or the people who end up clearly turning and showing that the help that they gave them was actually the most destructive thing in their lives, like helping someone transform who they are into a different type of sexuality. And what ends up happening is that because that just crushes everything they've been doing. They die a little inside, and they see someone who gets trans and then transes back, and that starts showing that, hey, all the crap you're doing here is stupid and self-defeating. You're actually hurting the very people that you're purporting to help. That kills them, because they basically say, and they can't accept that, because that means everything about what their whole purpose of existence is has basically been a lie. So what do? They say, oh, that's just the exception, and they'll just dismiss it. That's why you have so many irreligious Jews who are basically, purveying ideologies which are repugnant and repulsive, which are disgusting. And it all stems from the fact that they're internally at war with God. And they don't know how to deal with the success that was gifted to them. The same way Hunter Biden doesn't know how to deal with the success that his father had, because he has no purpose. And man needs purpose. We all need to have a reason to exist, that we're benefiting individuals, society. Otherwise, ultimately, we feel utterly miserable. This is why communism can never possibly work, even if you could somehow find a way to functionally make it actually work, which is impossible and cannot possibly happen. But even if you could snap your fingers and have God magically take care of raining down the manna on everyone and giving everyone their clothing and fulfilling all of their needs, that man would still feel miserable, because part of the reason we feel happiness, the only way we feel happiness, is if we achieve that happiness for ourselves and earn it for ourselves. And the goal of communism, the goal of that society, is to take that away from man. Say, we're going to allot to you your daily bread, we're going to allot to you your monthly clothing, and we're going to make sure that you have your housing is all properly met, and going to strip you of all of that, and you're going to go work like some stupid cog in this machine peeling potatoes, or in that machine sewing linens, and that's what you're going to do. And that is a person who has to be miserable, because you strip him of his individuality, you strip him of his ability to accomplish, you strip him of his opportunity to show himself that he's able to actually grow and contribute in a way that is naturally suited to him. And there is no way possible that person can actually find joy in what they are doing, because they ultimately also realize that even if they do nothing at all, they'll still be getting the same thing. unless they're thrown in prison. So that's the. I know you didn't expect to have such a deep philosophical answer to your question, but it's been a very long time since I broke down that whole thing, and I think it's something I definitely have not done it since October 7th. And there's been a lot of talk about Jews since October 7th. So, and I know that this question was completely good faith. Don't think I took this as bad faith question at all. But that's since I realized that Trumpinator was asking a genuinely, purely 100% good faith, like curiosity question, that's why I gave that answer. So thanks for the question, brother. Thanks for being late, Joe. Only missed 2 minutes. Great. I have arrived. I have arrived. I have arrived. Where are you? Am I not seeing? Oh, I popped it out. That's why I'm not doing a quick check over here. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, Johnny Reb, you make me laugh. Johnny Reb. Joe talks about Jewish intelligence promptly has 2 boomer stream movements. That's funny. But I had up here that I was going to share with you all. I was like, I don't know how I work this into the whole Trump thing. It's just a horrible, horrible story that happened in New York today. Talk about how society is crumbling and falling apart. Oh, my God. You want to talk about how society is crumbling and falling apart? Police are on the lookout for a suspect who abused a man's corpse on a New York City subway. That's right. He essayed a man's corpse on a New York City subway. Think he's American? That's the subway. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Why? 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 Like, it was like, why? 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 Why are there humans like this? Why are there humans like this guy? Seriously. No, like, okay, first and foremost, the fact that he can even achieve a position in the presence of a corpse is so disturbing. Oh my God. Why is society like this? How can there be humans like this? Oh my gosh. On a subway. Couldn't take him home? Oh my God. It's a corpse. So many questions. Did the guy die in the middle? Did he... How did you find a corpse? Did he drag a corpse onto the subway? I don't even want I don't even know if I want the answers. I don't want the answers. I'm just telling you so many different questions I have just about this tagline. Do you stumble on a corpse and just say, it would be interesting? Why? How do you just find the corpse? As horrific as the New York City subway system is, I'll tell you right now, I never stumbled on a corpse there. No. So then I'm like, did he drag the corpse on there? Or did he kill someone there? And then after he knew he was dead, like basically just go to town. Why? Why would someone do this? This is not human. Thank you, Lily. Member for 31 months. I think Lily Smith is the longest serving member here. I got to give her 31 months. Wow. God bless you, Lily. You're awesome. Liz. Joe, my father was profoundly successful, thus my inheritance is rather comfortable. My huge responsibility to care for his work. I'm not going to hurt his efforts, and I am confident, extremely happy. Okay, so let me tell you this. First and foremost, you have a purpose here, where you're actually able to step in and do something, right? And when I'm talking about there, I'm not talking about that. This doesn't apply to every individual. I'm talking, you want to know why you see a lot. I'm not saying this is what happened to Goldman. I'm not saying that this is what happened to Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg. I'm saying this is, I think, a prevalent thing. So there are always exceptions. And there are plenty of irreligious Jews who are perfectly happy and amazing, great people. Healthy, happy, phenomenal people. I'll give you one you all know. Viva Fry is an irreligious Jew who I have amazing respect for that guy. And he seems to be very well adjusted, very happy. I'm not saying all irreligious Jews are miserable. I'm simply saying when you have a large number of them who can be categorized in the ways that I have, you're going to have a noticeable percentage of them who are in the public spotlight, who are basically an embarrassment to anyone who's Jewish. And that's why. But yeah, there are always exceptions. And I'm not even saying it's the majority of irreligious Jews, which the majority of Jews are irreligious. I think like 9 out of 10 are irreligious. So, or 10% are religious, and then you have like another 10 to 20%, which are like sort of quasi, like have some sort of affiliation to the faith. And then you have like 50 to 60 who have basically no interest whatsoever. Other than like, the cultural element of being able to, make a Jew joke or something like that. But yeah, so when I'm talking in a generality, I'm not surprised at all. You seem happy and well adjusted. I'm not surprised at all. A lot of people are born children of wealthy people, and they have happy and productive lives also. But they need to have some sort of purpose, otherwise they won't. You found a purpose. God bless. I'm happy for that. 115 IQ, and still your mind is so closed. No, mine is much higher than 115. That's a mean. Sniffer in Chief became a huge. Nice. I'm going to like saying Sniffer in Chief a lot more. Welcome to the following. Welcome. I was just over potential criminal. He remembers New Eve's joke off. Oh, yeah, I did have a New Year's Eve joke off. That was a brilliant thing I came up with. That was like 3 years ago, I think. That was, I don't think I had it this year. I had a couple of them. That was fun. Good times. Corpse is a corpse, of course, and no one can talk to a corpse, of course. That is, of course, unless the corpse is the famous our train rider. That's really good. Well done, Soaring Bum. Nicely done indeed. Do you know the right? You either know you don't know. But if you know, you're showing your age. If you know, you're showing your age. All right. I didn't even get into my main topics yet. I'm an hour 43 and I didn't even get into them. Let's start moving ahead. One more waste that I'm going to share with you. One more waste. Oh, just a reminder. So Passover is Saturday night and Sunday night and goes into Monday. And I'm not going to be streaming until Monday night. I will be streaming from here. I'll be restreaming Layback Law at noon tomorrow or thereabouts. That'll be coming through my channel over here. And I hope you'll join us there. I'll be hanging out with a panel of attorneys. I'll tell you who's going to be there on Layback Law. If you give me a moment, I'll see who's checked in and is expected to appear on Layback Law with me tomorrow. We got Potentially Criminal. I got Danny on direct, possibly Runkle, and Nick Starrow. Well, that sounds like what we got tomorrow. Oh, and Nate the lawyer. That's what we have going on tomorrow. That is the famous Mr. Ed. Well done, Dick Parker. You did 2025, and do you remember Old St. Nick had a 40-foot? No, I don't remember that joke. I don't remember that joke. All right. I don't remember that. The days and times start running together. I did 2025? Really? I did it 3 months ago? Who the hell can remember what happened 3 months ago? All right. I talked to you about NIH waste and how they're spending it on teaching kids and something that's disheartening. Here you go. Here's another one.
The Trump administration has officially cut the funding of a $769 million contract for the Acacia Center for Justice. What is that, you ask? It's a
$769 million. Basically $15 million a week that the Acacia Center was getting. If that's over a year at least.
Legal group that pushes for penalties against attorneys and judges who misgender illegal aliens. Think about that for one moment.
Break that down.
Almost $750 million, the U.S. government, your taxes have been given over to a freaking group that's going after lawyers and judges for misgendering illegals? You got to be kidding.
Not even misgender. Like, it's a very specific thing. It's a very specific thing. You would think that, like, I don't know, 1 or 2 million might cover it. There has to be so much fraud. Not misgendering Americans. No. And it's not like anyone specifically judges and lawyers misgender. This can't be. How many times does that happen? How does that even possible? I wouldn't even think that happened 769 times. What? How can that possibly? There's not something about this isn't making sense.
We're just flushing money down the toilet. No more. Trump stopping it, Elon stopping it, and it's a great day in America when that happens.
That's got to be one thing they do. That's got to be only one thing that the Acacia Center does. It can't be just that. But even if that's part of what they're doing, God. So your questions are: 1, why a subway has a corpse on it? 2, how does he essay in a subway? Well, I'll tell you this. That I can answer. If a dude has a corpse on the subway, trust me, everyone on the in that car is basically 20 feet away from him and pretending that they're not noticing. That's what's happening in that scenario. When you're in a subway car and someone's doing something smelly or weird, you basically moving the entire car will just sort of gear on over to the other side, away from that person doing their thing. So if they're doing something smelly or disgusting, and this likely qualified as both, the entire car is, some people might be filming, but that's how it happens on a subway. 3, did both pay for this? I don't know. Where'd the National Guard go? I don't think there is in New York, the National Guard. How about the baby in the microwave joke that was so bad you couldn't air the punchline? How do you remember that? How do you people remember this stuff? Why do you remember this stuff? The point to a joke is you're supposed to hear the joke, you laugh. Sometimes you laugh really hard, and then it just leaves your brain. It's like a momentary glee of like, wait, that was funny. That was really good. We had good times. You're not supposed to remember them. This is not something you say in polite company. This is not something you repeat. It's just it's a joke for the moment. So everyone's like, ha, 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 that's funny. Oh, God, you're killing me. And you have a good moment. It just lifts your spirits for a short period of time. Hey, we don't have to revisit baby microwave jokes. No. God, I was like in 7th grade the last time I heard. I remember hearing. If you asked me the last time I heard a baby in a microwave joke, it was like probably like 7th or 8th grade. Showing age is recognizing that as Saturday Night Live is recognizing that as a Saturday Night Live skit. Chevy Chase newscast. It comes from Mr. Ed as Dick Parker as a theme song for Mr. Ed. I'm not even sure what you're talking about now. Is YouTube going to hit me on this?
Hello, I'm Mr. Ed. A horse is a horse, of course, and no one can talk to a horse, of course. That is, of course, unless the horse is the famous Mr. Ed.
There you go. I don't know, the Chevy Chase, I hope they don't get hit on that. But, yeah. Oh, you're the one who told them? All right. That explains why you would remember them. Let's move on. Let me see. I meant to have that over there. Okay. One last story before we get, and this is sort of a segue, start segueing into our main story here. The U.S. House passes H.R. 1526. U.S. passes H.R. 1526, restricting district rogue court judges from issuing nationwide injunctions against presidential policies. U.S. passes which now restricts district rogue court judges from issuing nationwide injunctions against presidential policies. Now, I have a lot of thoughts about this. We passed 218 to 212. A lot of thoughts about this. There has to be an answer. There must be an answer to what we should do when you have a potential nationwide injunction. What should the process be? Because the current process clearly isn't working. It's clearly not working properly. There have been, so far, in the Trump administration, 36 nationwide injunctions. In the entire 20th century, there were 80. So Trump has, in under 3 months, nearly half as many as we had in 100 years. That's insanity. So, 3 attorneys who I follow on X have given 3 different suggestions for what should happen when someone is looking to obtain a nationwide injunction. And it's sort of a difficult concept to sort of wrap your brain around, because what happens is, let's put Trump aside for a second, okay? Let's say that the next president, the next Democrat president, picture this scenario. The next Democrat president were to come out and write an EO that says no one is allowed to make a podcast where they are talking about bad things that the Democratic Party has done. Something that is clearly a constitutional free speech issue, clearly unconstitutional, and absurd and ridiculous. You sort of need to look for the absurd and ridiculous case to just sort of say, okay, well, what would we do in this scenario? What would happen in this scenario? They would say no one can host a podcast, which they're promoting, they're praising Donald Trump. So now I want to get rid of this. I want to be able to go out there and speak about Donald Trump. What would I do? I would go to federal court, to my local district judge, and I would say, hey, this is a violation of my First Amendment rights. I need some relief because I'm not able to speak now about Trump, and this is clearly a violation of my First Amendment rights, and I'm going to seek a TRO saying that this EO is ineffective, doesn't govern me. Does it make sense in this scenario? So now this is a nationwide policy that President Schmucko decides to pass or write, and now he issues this executive order. When a district judge is handling this, should he have the power to override the President of the United States, not just in my jurisdiction here in New Jersey or in New York, wherever I would file it, but should he have the power to issue it on a nationwide basis? And you can sort of see that in that type of scenario, it kind of makes sense that we're not going to have different jurisdictions. Some will be like, no, I think that's okay. I think the way he worded it is okay. And I'm not going to issue a TRO, and others are going to issue a TRO. So we should just have one judge who comes out there and says, yeah, this is something that is I'm making ineffective. And this now has nationwide application. Now, you can look at the role of the federal district judge and you can say, okay, he's only assigned to this particular jurisdiction. He can't have power beyond that jurisdiction. Or you can look at it and say he's a federal judge. Federal judge has federal jurisdiction. He happens to be assigned to this jurisdiction, but he's he could have been assigned to a different jurisdiction and he would have power there. And he's talking about federal law and saying this is unconstitutional. So now when he's issuing this TRO, there is logic to saying that he could affect beyond the geographic boundaries of his particular jurisdiction. So it's not such a it's very easy to say no rogue judges can ever overturn something. And you can understand it given the crazy situation we've been watching unfold for the last 3 months and how insane some of these clown judges are, because they basically turning every issue into this is now a constitutional issue. We have a constitutional crisis, and he's ignoring what his duties are because he only has Second Amendment. He only has Article 2 powers, and he's taking on Article 1 powers. He only is part of the executive branch and he's taking on congressional type of work, whatever it is. So now they're basically looking at everything he does as this is a constitutional issue, and now I can pass this on a national basis. But there are some issues which you could say, okay, this is something that shouldn't matter which jurisdiction I'm in. Doesn't matter whether I'm in New Jersey or New York or in Nebraska or in South Dakota or in Arizona. It doesn't matter. Everyone should be able to podcast and not have to worry about that stupid EO. So you can sort of see this is a difficult thing. Now we have to set up a general guideline. This is the rules that we're going to have when someone comes with any sort of application that's looking to stop a federal mandate issued via executive order. It doesn't even have to be by executive order, by the way. It really could be a statute that Congress passes. If Congress passed a statute like that, saying no one can make a podcast like that, and somehow the president signed it and it became a law, should I be able to go into my district court, my district judge, and say, hey, I need a TRO and this is clearly violating my First Amendment rights? And can they do it on a national level? So you sort of want to have parameters in place for how this whole thing would operate. And so I've seen three different answers tonight as solutions as to what would be the healthiest way for our American judiciary to be set up so that the judicial branch is not trampling on the Article 2 powers of the president, and yet that they should be able to have enough bite that if there's something that is ridiculously unconstitutional, then you don't have to run to every jurisdiction in the country, to all 50 states, and get a different judge to agree that this is crazy. So you sort of want to find that healthy. So we're talking about how to set up our judiciary in a way that is actually healthy. And the guidelines and the parameters of this are ultimately likely to be set up by one of two areas, either by an order from the Supreme Court as to what's going to happen with these particular EOs or these challenges to nationwide EOs, or and basically rein in the district courts, or by Congress passing a law saying no rogue judges. Well, what are you supposed to do then? What are you supposed to do in that scenario? So here are three different suggestions. Some I like more than others, but I want to share them with you because I think this is an interesting and topical thing for us to sort of parse through as to what makes sense as far as being fair and logical and best for our society in the long term. Because when you're passing a law or the Supreme Court is issuing an order, this is not something that's just going to govern us for the next 4 years while Trump is in office. This is something which can be on the books and likely will be on the books for many decades as to how things are going to operate. So you need to, you can't just grab a short-term fix. You need to have something that's going to have duration and be logical in 99% of, if not 100% of all foreseeable circumstances. So all right. So first one we'll look at is suggested by Leslie McAdoo Gordon. So she's responding to this person saying, have noticed a few posts on universal injunctions and how these give a district judge more power than the Supreme Court. What's listed is in the 20th century, there were a total of 27. In Trump's first term, there were 80 against his administration. And so far, in his second term, there are 36 against his administration. So this is what Leslie McAdoo Gordon suggests. And I'll tell you this much. I think there's probably a lot of things politically I disagree with her on. But she's not a stupid person. Let's hear her suggestion. You framed it fine. She's actually an intelligent attorney. It's a difficult issue. On the one hand, a federal judge operates within his or her own district only. Why should that bind the nation? On the other hand, those districts are just for administrative convenience. Federal court, in truth, is local representative of the national government. And that one court has authority to issue orders that affect the parties before it, regardless of where they are and for effects outside that jurisdiction. And the federal executive branch is a national entity. It doesn't operate district by district. It operates on a national level. So you can drag the United States in, and once you drag the United States in, now they are bound by that decision, and that should be working on a national level. So I find the district issue to be a red herring in a way. What she suggests is we need a better system within the system for dealing with cases involving the federal government as litigants. So she suggests a dedicated bench of judges with requisite specialized knowledge and experience in federal law and government contracts and APA, etc., the kinds of federal law that affect the government as an entity directly. Congress would set the parameters of the jurisdiction, and then have a handful of them in each region of the country that only deal with cases where the U.S. is a party. And then those cases can appeal right to the circuit court that only deals with those kinds of cases and has expedited track for TROs coming from the specialized lower bench. And then normal procedures take things to SCOTUS. So she basically is saying that for the lower branches, we would have specialized judges who would be dealing with this. They would be more expert in these particular areas of law. We already have a subsystems of courts that do exactly that for claims against the government. These are the courts of federal claims in the federal circuit. That's true. Those are specialized courts. So she's basically saying, if you're bringing a TRO, we should have specialized courts for that. You can never completely take the politics out of the judiciary, but this subsystem will cut down the number of judges that touch these kinds of cases so you can control better for it, take the randomness out of it, and get faster results. So a handful of DC judges would need to be permanently dedicated to this specialty branch. See, already when you're saying a handful of DC judges, you're already wasting our time, because you know that if they're going to go along with whatever Democrat says and be as part of this reorganization, because they are more of these cases brought in DC than most anywhere else, because the federal government head is there, and sometimes that's the best or only venue for the case. So she's basically saying, let's make a sub-judiciary system specifically designated to handle claims against the United States for TROs, and that way we'll have experts handling it. I did not like this suggestion. I thought that, personally, it's one suggestion. It's not illogical. I don't really see how ultimately that will end up being any different than what we currently have. You can create a whole, especially if you have it in DC, you're going to have the same ridiculously partisan judges, and they'll just move them over into this branch. Now, you could say, well, you could have Trump appoint them. But even if Trump appoints a judge, I don't have confidence in judges that Trump appoints. Look at Exhibit A is Brett Kavanaugh. Exhibit B is Amy Coney Barrett. So no, I don't have confidence in his appointments. He's going to find people who we can rely on 5 years from now, or even 2 years from now, are going to be people who would be able to handle this properly. Certainly don't trust any of the judges who are presently presiding in anywhere within 100 miles of DC. So yeah, I don't like anything about, in that sense, I think this is going to be politically weaponized, and you're going to see the exact same results. The same 30 TROs we saw will get the exact same 30. So I don't think that's going to fix that problem. I don't think that addresses the problem sufficiently. And just because they happen to be experts in APA law or experts in government contracts or whatever it is, that whatever levels of expertise that Congress would decide to make us to say that this is where we're going to cut the yardstick, I think we're going to be back exactly where we are 10 minutes after we set up this thing. Only now they're going to be more empowered. Now they're going to be like, this is my job. My job is to give out TROs. That's what's going to end up coming out of this. I think it'll be, if anything, I think it has potential to exacerbate the problem. They're going to feel as if I was put in this role to issue TROs against Trump. That's how they'll treat it. Or against anyone they don't like. And slam down TROs if it's a Democrat president in there. And I think that this has disastrous potential. So I think it's a suggestion, and I understand why there's logic behind it. I just think that it's easy to see how this will manifest into exacerbating the problem 10 times worse than it already is. It'll be like, oh, this is the court we go to, and I know that the judge who's there is someone is friends with all these different DC lobbyists. Oh God, no. This is, I don't like the suggestion at all. I don't. But it was one suggestion I saw which I just had to throw out at you. So that was the Leslie McAdoo Gordon suggestion. Next suggestion came from Shipwreck Crew. And this one is, to me, a little bit more intriguing. He says, and he's responding to Margot Cleveland, we're going to do her last. But what he says is maybe the better way is to deprive the circuits of jurisdiction over nationwide injunctions unless they take them on bank. That forces the circuits to discipline the district judges because of the toll it would exact on the circuits. Now, this is an interesting suggestion. Now, I'm not sure if he's saying we would start there. I'm not sure if he's saying that you would go straight to the circuit court, or in order to get a nationwide injunction, you would need to have a circuit court do it. And it's not just a panel of 3 judges, but you need to have, you know, all 9, 12 of them, 20 of them come in there and basically vote. That's a better suggestion to me. It's like, A, that's not going to happen that often because they're not going to want to deal with these cases because they're going to be like, it's a major pain in the neck to have an en banc. So they don't like doing the en banc thing. And I think he understands politically just the machinations of how things work inside the judicial system. That what he's saying here is an interesting logical deduction that they're likely not going to want to have to deal with this every other day. Like, oh God, I got to come in here like every day and deal with another application for a TRO. And the entire court has to be here. I can't take a day off. I think that would start to piss them off. So I think they'll be a lot more reluctant to do it. And frankly, they should be exceedingly rare. It's much better if they're exceedingly rare. So I think that this is an interesting suggestion. I kind of like this suggestion. If this were in place today, I think that would be better than what we currently have. I still have so little confidence in the DC circuit courts that I think that if they're looking at it en banc, I think that they're going to likely too often give in to their political nature. So I think this would be better than what we currently have. I just don't think it's enough. Because I think that they're so politically motivated in DC that I don't have much confidence in this suggestion actually remedying it. It could make it better. I certainly like this better than the first suggestion we looked at. It's definitely a little bit. And en banc means the entire court. Normally, there's a panel of a circuit. There's a panel of 3 circuit court judges who will look at a particular case. So understand the process, okay? Petitioner comes in and says, "Hey, I'm from USAID. I'm supposed to get paid from USAID. Trump isn't paying off the money to USAID. I need to get my money." And then it goes to district court judge. District court says, "Hey, you have to pay off all these USAID stuff," right? That's what's been happening. So now that affects not just this guy, but everyone across the country, or I guess the world, who's getting money from USAID. So that's what makes it a national injunction. You have one person come in, and all of a sudden, this ruling is affecting everyone who's never even set foot in this court, may never even set foot in the country. So that's what we're talking about, a national injunction. So then after they get that, so they go to the TRO and say, "Hey, the government's got to release it immediately." Judge says, signs off TRO. Trump, you got to pay these bills immediately. Then it gets appealed to the circuit court. Circuit court, you're going to have 3 judges there. 3 judges who are now coming in there who are basically saying, we agree with the lower court and we're approving the TRO. Boom, rubber stamp it. It's fine if it's in DC or some of these other woke locations. Then it's got to go up to SCOTUS. So this is as opposed to the way I'm taking what Shipwreck Crew here is, TRO would help this one individual. If you get that TRO, then you want to apply on a national level, then you can go up to the appellate court and say, en banc, I want the entire court to weigh in as to whether this should be on a national level. That definitely would make fewer of them. At first, you have to meet approval with the first district court judge, and that would affect the individuals who are petitioners. And then after that, you go up to the circuit court and say, hey, we want this to be on a nationwide basis. That would be a way to do it. It's definitely better than what we currently have. I still don't trust, especially the DC Circuit Court. In some of these circuits, I don't trust the First Circuit. Not too confident. in several of the circuits we have up here in the Northeast. I practice in some of these circuits, so I can't speak any further than that. But that was the second suggestion. Third suggestion. Margot Cleveland. Potential brainstorm. Let me get to the suggestions before I go into this third suggestion. Passover, unleavened bread, and then first fruits all start Friday the 12th at sundown. That's not exactly right. No. At sundown tomorrow is the start of Shabbos. But as soon as Shabbos ends, it's the start of Passover. So that's why there's 3 days in a row that we won't be doing work. But technically, the first night of Passover is considered Saturday night. Like all the observances we have. Like, for example, there's a mitzvah that we eat matzah. Matzah is like this type of, in place of bread, it's basically like an unleavened type of thing. And it's kind of like, for Ashkenazic Jews, it's kind of like, it's kind of like, it's kind of like a large cracker that you sort of break and can share with others. I'll share with you some pictures so you can. The machine-made matzah, just so you know, this is like what machine-made matzah are square. Everyone knows Manischewitz matzah. These taste awful in comparison to hand matzah. Matzah made by hand. If you look at, we pull up some hand matzah here, which tend to be round. That is much tastier. Trust me, it's much better. It's not even comparable. And it's a staple of our diet for a week. Happy Passover, you'll be missed. Thank you, Philip. Do cats have to observe Passover if they live in a Jewish house? Yeah, we don't have any bread or bread products. And you're not allowed to give them. We're not allowed to have any benefit from them, which means you can't feed them to your animals. So yeah, when I had goldfish as a kid, so most of the fish food we had was chametz. Chametz means not matzah. It means has some sort of leavening agent in there, or something that's leavened. It's something that's risen. So we always would give them. We had these cubes of dried worms that we give them on Passover. So, but that applies for all pets. You can't have any. We can't have any of that stuff in our house. It's considered like it's such a big no-no. By the way, it is like such a big one. Like the punishment for having bread products in our house is being excommunicated by God. It's like a serious one. There's certain like commandments that it's like this one they're not playing around with. They're not playing around on. But so is breaking the Sabbath, by the way. But that's actually that punishment for breaking the Sabbath intentionally is being stoned. So yeah, Sorenbaum showing his youthfulness. Yeah, with his Chevy Chase reference. That's true. TRO should only be for the party before the court. Well, that's the way it should be. That's not the way it seems to be right now. It could be made that way by the Supreme Court. If it's going to be on a nationwide basis, what about the situation I described before? What about a situation where it's an EO, which is clearly violating basic fundamental constitutional rights? Let's say there was an EO saying no one can practice Islam. Someone make an EO like that, which I'll tell you right now, that is clearly an unconstitutional order. So you're going to have go in all 50 states? That doesn't seem to make sense. Starting 9:30 p.m. New Year's Eve party, 2025 guest review of 2024. Make Joe laugh, take his money. Look at that. I stand corrected. 1. TRO only for parties. 2. TRO only in jurisdiction of court. 3. Expand TRO requires appeal to a circuit. 4, national must appeal to each circuit, only 13, so it's not overly burdened. Okay. All right. Will the Senate be able to make an amendment to the HR to cover TROs when the Senate gets it? Will the Senate be able to make an amendment to the HR of the House resolution to cover TROs when the Senate gets it? They can, but they don't have to go back to the House. No TROs, only injunctions that can be challenged. So a TRO is a form of injunction. It's a form of injunctive relief. The TRO stands for temporary restraining order. Injunctive relief just basically means like it's an order from the court directing someone to do something. TRO is like on a very short-term basis, and it's the most immediate thing that you get right away. So, but injunctions, the same way like defamation can be either libel or slander. So, so maybe you're saying here you can get injunctive relief, but not a TRO. You would have to get through a preliminary order. Okay, that's an interesting thought. If that's what you're suggesting, that's an interesting thought. In other words, let the cake bake for a little bit before you give it national significance. That's an interesting suggestion. But what if it's basically you can't practice your religion? Let's say the EO says that. So you're going to say you have to wait 2 weeks before you can practice it? Or violates your speech. You have to deal with the crazy type of EEO so we can appreciate what would we want what type of empowerment would we want to give the court, because we're basically not setting up for how do we deal with this situation during Trump's administration, but how are we setting up this country that's going to be running 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now. If it's a nationwide injunction, they should have 2 members from each circuit sit, and they have to come to a 70% acceptance for it to go in. Okay, so these are all. I like that's also an interesting suggestion. And what the overarching theme we're getting here is a notion of let's have broader review by the judiciary before such a thing becomes a nationwide perspective, embraced nationwide, and far greater consensus from a larger number of folks. This I can get. What you're suggesting here, I like a lot. What you're suggesting here, I actually like this suggestion probably the best. The reason I like this one the best is because I do agree with you. It should be something that this is obvious, that you have to be like a jackass to ignore the unconstitutionality of the EO or this statute. That and it will account for the handful of jackasses by allowing 30% dissent. But you have to have like a significant majority, like 70%, if you're going to get a nationwide injunction. This, to me, is the best suggestion. And also, you have it from across the country. So this way, you have people weighing in from across the country. I like this. I actually like this one a lot. The more I think about this, the more I like this. Good job, Rob Price. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to be like, you know what I came up with? I'll credit you, Rob. Don't worry. I really like this suggestion a lot. You're thinking. 1979 Saturday Night Live Weekend Update. Bill Murray, National I Love Horses Day. A corpse is a corpse, of course, of course. The year Mr. Ed died. Oh, that's why it's a corpse is a corpse. So you weren't doing Mr. Ed. You were doing on the death of Mr. Ed. Now I need to find that. Now I'm really, you piqued my curiosity, Soaring Bum. You really piqued my curiosity. Like, now I gotta search for that. Let's see if I can find that on YouTube. No, not funny yet. If someone could share that with me, that'd be awesome. I'd love to see that clip. All right. Kudos to you. So he's saying, no, I'm right. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying a horse is a horse. I'm saying a corpse is a corpse. Well done. Well played. Sorry, Mom. Well played indeed. One old guy's opinion: olive oil, water, salt, and flour. No olive oil. No. Just, and no salt. And yeah, there is flour. It's just flour and water. And it has to be baked really fast. The entire process, from the moment the water touches the flour, the entire thing has to be baked in 18 minutes. And the way they have it processed out in these bakeries that they do it by hand, they get the entire thing done in 7. From the moment it touches, like I'm mass producing, and they'll have and they're so freaking expensive. I can't even begin to tell you how expensive they are. You get actual, really kosher for Passover hand matzah. I'm talking I think this year was $42 a pound. So $41.50. It's crazy. And over the course of a week, if you have a family, we get a lot of pounds. So I forgot it's already Friday the 11th. It is technically right now Friday the 11th. So I get chicken and fish instead. I'm all in. Sure. Yeah, you get chicken and fish instead. If you're a cat, sure. This week you get chicken and fish. District can TRO for the district. Circuit appeals can TRO the circuit. SCOTUS can TRO USA. So that's an interesting thought. And there you would be like, if you win, you go up to the next level. It's like, see, you go so far in each 13 circuits and work your way through each, or just one all the way to SCOTUS. It's almost like, all right, you want to go for the big money? You got it. All right. Well, Jim, so far you're doing well so far. You got TRO in district court. It seems as if the circuit court's gonna be in your favor. Now, do you want to give up here? You want to stop here, or you want to push on further and try to go to SCOTUS? You want to push on further and try to go to SCOTUS? You want to stop right here? I don't know, Scott. Should I go? What do you think? Should I go for SCOTUS? I mean, it's such a great game show. Oh my God, all the strategizing. Do I think SCOTUS is going to give it to me? Do I want to go to SCOTUS? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to go to SCOTUS. That is interesting. I can see how that's consistent with, based on where your powers of jurisdiction are. Everyone would start knowing what circuit they're in. You're like, wait, the second circuit issue. Wait, are we in the second circuit? No, I thought we're in the fourth circuit. Where are you from? And where are you from? What's the home operations for your business? You want to get paid for USAID? There's something got approved by the Fourth Circuit. What state are you located in? One old guy's opinions. Leaven is representative of sin. So you remove the leaven out of the house, you shall not consume sin. And during this week, that Grok is working well for you here. Yes, there is a notion that there's a allegory to sin. So a representative. Well, Monty Python's documentary of ancient Jewish life and the life of Brian. Who threw that stone? Who threw that stone? Wait, is there a woman? Is there a woman here? No. Get your beards here. So many great lines. I referenced that movie, I think it was a week ago or so, when I was talking about the People's Republic, the Liberation No, we're the People's Front for the Republic of Liberation. Oh my gosh. That movie was genius. That movie was genius. So many different ways. So bring out. No, that's Holy Grail. That's I'm talking about Life of Brian here, and my wife is invoking Holy Grail. One of her favorite scenes for both of us. One of the favorite scene that we ever seen is bring out your dead. Bring out your dead. Here's one, 9 pence. I'm not dead. What's that? I'm not dead. He says he's not dead. Oh, come on. He's mostly dead. I'm not dead. I don't want to go on the cart. Oh, don't be such a baby. There's a car. This guy walking by with the Carter corpses. So he's a live old person on his shoulder. The guy with the corpse, like, bring out your dead. Guy, here's one, 9 pence. The guy on his shoulder's like, I'm not dead. Oh my God. I don't want to go on the cart. Don't be such a baby. Yes, indeed. Mexicans call matzah tortillas. Just make the tortillas without baking soda. My last name is De La Cruz. There you go. Chabad is a recipe with those olive oil and salt. Yeah, don't go with Chabad. Don't go with Chabad. That's all I can say. Don't go. They're very nice. I know a lot of Chabad people. They're very nice people. All right, let's get to the third suggestion. You all come up with some good suggestions. I like Allegan. I like this one that you had here. I kind of like it. I think it adds like a little bit of, there's an element of fun now to these TROs. Do you want to go for the circuit? You might lose everything. You go to the circuit, you might lose everything. Do you want to take it to the circuit? I would think the individual would be like, yeah, I'm not going to go to the circuit. I got what I need. I'm not going to the circuit. So Margot Cleveland, who's a great account. I mentioned her before. I told you to start following her. She's phenomenal. Professor MJ Cleveland. She says, potential brainstorm. Just remembered, while SCOTUS now has near complete discretion over appeals it takes, previously some had to be heard. So statute requiring SCOTUS to hear expedite appeal in any case with nationwide injunction entered against federal government. Is that a solution? So what she's basically saying is, what about if we just say, if this is a nationwide thing, just presto, go straight to SCOTUS? Nationwide injunction is passed. TRO is passed. Boom. Next day, Supreme Court. That'll get SCOTUS to start limiting their jurisdiction right there. They'll be like, are we dealing with this every 10 minutes here? This I kind of like. This is the one out of all the suggestions I gave you. So I gave you an increasing order of what I like more. While SCOTUS now has near complete discretion, meaning they can decide, do we want to take it, do we not? You say, no. Nationwide injunction, you must take this. I would skip right past the circuit court. Skip right past them. District court, now affecting on a national level, it's beyond what the circuit can review. Why does the circuit have power? Why does the Second Circuit have power? What's happening in Arizona? Why would that be? Or in Florida? Or even Jersey, which is Third Circuit. Why should the Second Circuit get to control anything that's happening in my circuit? So I would say, yeah, if a district judge decides to go rogue and say, hey, we're going to do this here now, boom, presto. Send it right to Supreme Court. Supreme Court has to make a decision on it within 3 days. There you go. And that'll stop some of these rogue judges from thinking they're going to get away with crap. Many of these TROs would have been rejected if these judges realized that 10 minutes later, whatever they write here is going to be reviewed by the Supreme Court. Many of them would have been like, yeah, I'm not giving this TRO because it's embarrassing. And, but if they know that it's going to be reviewed by the Supreme Court, that by virtue of them signing that order, it's going to go straight to the Supreme Court the next day. I think that's probably the best answer. That's probably the best answer. I really like this answer too. If I had to rank these answers, I'd probably put this one ahead of Allegan's, just because this is a little bit too comical for me. So like how we're going to treat our judiciary. But to me, this makes the most sense. I would make a poll, but I don't think the poll is going to give me like 40 characters to write out my answers. And I'm not going to be able to fit them in. If I just write the words review en banc, someone coming in here and sees it is not going to know what the hell that even means. So I don't think we're going to get like a properly reflective poll. Some great suggestions you guys had, though. Really, great suggestions. Great suggestions indeed. This right here is because this covers the scenario I was talking about. If you had someone issue a crazy you don't even need to have two members. I like it better with two than even if you had just one from each district court. You're talking about a 13 member panel. You're telling me you need to get 10 out of 13? If we had a crazy EO, like saying no one can practice Islam, which would be insane and clearly unconstitutional, but somebody wrote an EO like that. I don't think Trump would in a million years, but some other crazy does. Or someone, some crazy lefty coming out and saying you can't promote right-wing conservative politics. You can't promote MAGA because we've deemed that a threat to our country. So something that's a clearly unconstitutional order, it should be able to have nationwide basis. And the way you would have it, you would have a nationwide perspective by having judges from each circuit. And it should be something that's not a simple majority. And this way you get 26 judges in there and you got to get 20 of them to agree with you. And if it was something that crazy, I'd like to think that you would get 20 who would agree with you. I would expect that you would. And it would be very, very limited applications. And most of these TROs would just, flat fall. They would just die on the vine. When case starts in the district, then appeal the circuit, then force SCOTUS to hear for a nation. It forces circuit to slap the district judges. And you're sort of saying a little bit what you sort of were prescient as to where, I don't know if you saw what Margot Cleveland wrote, because she said they go straight to SCOTUS. And you're saying basically that they should, force SCOTUS. So you wrote that before I shared with you the Margot Cleveland thing. I see, you're insightful. I'm not questioning the insight. I like your perspective also. That's a good suggestion too. There are a lot of ways to skin this cat. But right now, that's not the system we have in place. And if this is what was ultimately adopted, I'd be totally fine with this. 66% would be 9 out of 13 of panel districts. Yeah, okay, fine. So we said 70%. That's why I said 10 out of 13. That was quick lawyer math. I assume that 10 out of 13 was right. Maybe 19 out of 26. Once you're talking about like that high a number, I think that it would be effective. It wouldn't make that much. You wouldn't think it would make that much of a difference between 19 and 20. Anyhow, I also want to share with you before I get those were the suggestions, and I think that that would greatly improve the current situation that we have here. Two more wins that I want to share with you, by the way, before I get on out of here. Let me check. Two huge wins. Johnny Reb says, love the anti-communist purpose-filled life rant. Thank you. Thank you. Also, he was he writes he was exploring his corporeal existence show. Oh, stop it. That's not. You're better than that. Limit TRO strictly to Bill of Rights issues for American citizens. Not bad. Not bad. Santiago Space Outlaw says there's a difference between restricting executive preventing action by a person and forcing executive by the executive branch. A district judge cannot force action outside of his jurisdiction. So what Santiago is basically touching on here, what he's touching on is the notion between something that is prescriptive versus something that is compulsory. Stopping you from doing something versus mandating that you do something. So he's saying the district court should only be able to stop him, but not be able to mandate. And that's a notion which the court will often embrace. They recognize that difference. The passive type of TRO versus a more active one, and saying they shouldn't be empowered to do an active one. And there is logic to that. Like the passive one would be like, no, I'm stopping this EO from prohibiting folks from speaking or practicing their religion, as opposed to I'm mandating that you must go get that guy from another country. I'm mandating that you must fly, that you must rehire these people or pay out money. Specialized courts lead to trampled rights. Just look at FISA, for example. Yeah, that's a very insightful thing. I told you I didn't like that suggestion. I think it's a very neocon type of suggestion. It's a little bit naive. Spud says, Rob Gouvet refuses to watch the Holy Grail. Please set him straight, Joe. I will. But you see, it's a little hard because the Holy Grail obviously has some sort of religious thing. I can understand why a religious Christian, which I believe Rob likely is a religious Christian, I can understand why a religious Christian would find it blasphemous. So yeah, I'm not gonna, and if that's the reason he's not watching it, I'm not gonna be the Jew pushing him to like watch something that Christians may deem blasphemous. That's not what I'm never taking that role. So sorry, Spuds, but yeah, that moment was funny. All right, 2 wins. I need you all to be informed of. I knew this was gonna be a long show tonight. 2 wins. Numero uno is American Association of Colleges versus Teacher Education, Linda McMahon. Upon consideration of the parties' submission to the Supreme Court's recent order granting a stay pending appeal at the Department of DOE, we grant the government's motion to stay the preliminary injunction. Oh, no. What's the case here? The lower court had ordered Trump to pay DEI grants. Said, you got to pay them. You got to pay those DEI grants. SCOTUS says, no. SCOTUS said it stayed similar injunction, prompting the Fourth Circuit to do so too. Since SCOTUS said, yeah, we're not forcing them to spend that money. Now you had the Fourth Circuit over here. This is the Court of Appeals saying, yeah, we're not going to force them to pay. You want to know why? Because they saw that SCOTUS isn't a big fan of forcing them to pay out DEI stuff. So now the Fourth Circuit went along. Again, this is an order being made of chaos by SCOTUS and appellate courts halting improper injunctions by district court judges. I write to alert the court to It's the Supreme Court's recent granting of the government's application for a stay pending appeal in Department of Education versus California. Like this case, that case involves a challenge to the Department of Education's termination of various grants, where the district court entered preliminary relief enjoining the government from giving effect to those terminations. Supreme Court has now stayed the district court's order in California, explaining that the government is likely to succeed in showing the district court lacked jurisdiction to order the payment. You can't make them pay the money under the APA. Instead, the court explained suits seeking relief like that sought by California plaintiffs likely belong to the Court of Federal Claims, not district court. Court of Federal Claims. I know this gets a little confusing, so let me try to explain this in non-lawyer speak. There's a special court called, at the lowest level, you have federal district court, but those are just for general federal law issues. Or in cases of diversity, we have someone from state A going up to someone from state B, and it's enough amount. But let's talk about the different state people, because that's not relevant here. So, but when you have federal courts are, if you have an issue about what the federal law, how to interpret the federal law, that's what your district courts are for. Is someone guilty of violating federal law. So now when you're dealing with something that has to do with federal violation of federal law, that is something that your federal courts are for. Now, but if you have a claim against the United States of America that they owe me money, there's a special court for that, not part of the district court, special court called Court of Claims. So all these folks were claiming, hey, you got to pay USAID our money. We got to get our money. We got to give that money out to this person, to that person. Those are monetary claims that you're saying the government has to pay that. You don't belong in district court. And that's what the Supreme Court said. If it's just a matter you're not getting the monies that you're owed, so that's where you go to the Court of Claims and get your relief there. You can't go run into a district court for that. And it's a special process, a whole different process you go with the Court of Claims. And you also, it can't be a nationwide thing. This way, the Court of Claims will look at it like, okay, what's your claim? Let me see if your claim has validity. And then you have the whole process where you come after them and you try and basically, prove in a court case that you're entitled to the monies you're claiming. Not having some TRO, which is going to be nationwide. That's ridiculous. That's what the Supreme Court said, fortunately. So, and the Supreme Court said, they got to go to the Court of Claims. You want money from the government? Go to the Court of Claims. And if you think you're going to win here, you're unlikely to succeed because you're in the wrong courthouse. So you can't get a TRO. When you're unlikely to succeed, you don't get TROs. So, and that's what the government said here. They said, hey, this whole DEI grants that they want money from the government. The Supreme Court said you can't give a TRO here because they're almost definitely going to fail because they're in the wrong courthouse. In addition, the court concluded that the remaining state factors were met because the government will be harmed if it's unable to recover the grant funds once they're dispersed, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one win we got, that the Fourth Circuit is recognizing that they got to start staying in their lane because the Supreme Court said, hey, stay in your lane. You're not supposed to be handling this. This all belongs in the Court of Claims. This Court of Claims has its own appellate process, which is not the Fourth Circuit. It's like the Fourth Circuit Court of Claims. It's a different courthouse, different judges. So that's one win that we got. No monies to the DEI folk. Sorry, DEI folk. The next win we got today, was I updated this post because that's my third or fourth post explaining SCOTUS was actually confusing. They were. Regarding return to U.S. So remember the other day I was talking to you about that Karim Abrego guy? So he was the guy who, in case you forgot what this case was about, okay? You had a guy who illegally came to this country in 2011. In 2019, there was an application to deport him because they say he's a member of a gang. Get rid of him. We got to get rid of this guy. Get rid of him. They had a whole court administrative procedure, court proceeding. The judge said, oh, yeah, let's get rid of him. He put in his defenses. He got all his defenses out there. Everything he's saying, yeah. It's I want to stay. I want to stay. Judge reached the immigration judge looks at it and says, No, you go. Adios. Done. Adios. Get out of here. But then came up with a new claim. After the court came to that conclusion, he's like, I'm being persecuted. I roll bread and there was a whole feud going on with different gangs there and they want to kill me. You can't send me back to El Salvador. Send me back to El Salvador. I'm going to get killed there. So the court came out and said, okay, there's this 8th Street gang, which is going to kill him if we send him back there. We don't be responsible for this guy dying. You cannot send him to El Salvador. And that's where everything stayed. Meanwhile, he ends up getting married. He gets a kid. He has a kid. Now Trump comes along and says, okay, this guy doesn't belong here. Let's send him to El Salvador. Now, also what happened during this time is that gang, which was hunting him, was eradicated by the El Salvadoran government. They got rid of him. So he's not in danger anymore. However, the orders that said we're staying his removal. So first there's an order of removal after they have the whole proceeding. Then once he comes forward and says, if I go back to El Salvador, I'm going to die. So they say, okay, we're going to stay that order of removal. Government, you can't remove him. We're putting a stay on that. And that's where everything stood from a legal perspective. From a factual perspective, the reasons for that stay no longer apply. But just because the facts change, you can't ignore this order saying stay his removal. So the government had no right until they would go back to the court and say, hey, this whole reason for the stay no longer there. We need a judge to come out and say that we're allowed to remove him. They didn't go through that process. Instead, Trump came in, picked him up, put him on a plane to El Salvador, and threw him into prison there. Now, his folks are like, he didn't have due process. He had no due process. This is crazy. You just removed him. He had his due process. He's entitled to further due process to basically say, no, I am still a threat. I am still at risk. So he's deprived of that due process because what happened is if the government would have come back to the court and said, hey, that whole reason for the stay no longer in effect, so the order of removal, so get rid of the stay and let's have the order of removal and just remove him, they could have done that. Or what they could have done is say, we're not going to move him to El Salvador. We're going to move him somewhere else. Oh. He's in danger in El Salvador. That doesn't mean he's in danger in Honduras. He's not in danger in Colombia. He's not in danger in France. So we'll just want to send him back to El Salvador. So his lawyers had a field day because of the fact that he had been sent back to El Salvador. And now there's this whole court case going on, which ultimately went to SCOTUS. So this is what Margot was writing about the decision that came from SCOTUS today. So she said, I updated this post because my 3rd or 4th post explains SCOTUS was actually confusing regarding return to U.S. portion of the order. So what they wrote here, here's the confusing language. What they wrote here is the order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. A big thing that the government had here is now he's in the custody of El Salvador in their prison system. The judge came out and said, you have to go get him from El Salvador. The government's like, you can't direct us as to how we're going to deal with another country. Well, he's not in our control anymore. You can't direct us to do that. So the Supreme Court, when they were dealing with this, they were recognizing that you can't direct the government to do something that's technically beyond their potential control. The judge was like, I can't believe that you don't have control over him. You're sending people down to their prison. They're storing these prisoners for you. You must have complete control over them. Trump is like, well, Trump's attorneys are like, you can't tell us what to do. So what she wrote here is SCOTUS enters a nuanced order in case of illegal alien wrongly deported to El Salvador. Court order holds an order to be effectuate a return to U.S. goes too far. They say SCOTUS orders fails to require a return to U.S. and suggests it's not an appropriate remedy. Either. Let's go back. I don't care about this one. This one is nothing. That's the name of the case. What they wrote is the order properly requires the government to facilitate. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. So what the intended scope of the term effectuate in the district court's order is, however, unclear. So the district court said you must effectuate his return, meaning you must get him back here. The intended scope of the term effectuate in the district's order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. You can't tell the government they must get him back here when they may not even be able to get him back here. District court should clarify its directive with due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch and the conduct of foreign affairs. For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. The order heretofore entered by the Chief Justice is vacated. So what the court is basically saying is you can tell them to do what they can to facilitate. You can direct the government, they have to do whatever they can to facilitate his return here. But you cannot direct them to make sure he's returned. They have to basically say, they have to do their due diligence to say, hey, can we get him back here? But not that they have to negotiate as if he's being held hostage by El Salvador. You cannot compel the U.S. government to negotiate for his release. That doesn't make any. The Supreme Court says that doesn't make any sense. But you can direct them to do it, take what steps they can to facilitate and get him to try and get him back here. Even that, to me, I'm sorry. I don't like that decision from SCOTUS. It doesn't make sense to me that you're directing the government. I mean, I guess when you're saying facilitate is get on the phone and say, "Hey, do you want to get him back here?" So it's not really dealing with foreign affairs. It's not really dealing with foreign affairs because it's no different if he's in El Salvador than if he was, I guess, you're not forcing them to negotiate with a foreign country. You're just forcing them to at least do what minimal steps it would take to try and get him back here. Same way, like you can get on the phone with some prison cell in Texas and say, hey, can you send them back here? So maybe it's the same thing that you say to El Salvador, hey, can you send them back here? And it could be that simple. It's not really embroiling. The court's now not really embroiling in foreign affairs. But if El Salvador says, no, we don't want to give him up, then theoretically, I would interpret that the government has no duty to take any further steps. System we have in place is crazy that district can rule outside of jurisdiction. Well, that's true. That's why Joe's checking Rumble more than once. Wow. I check it all the time. All the time. I feel like I live in Rumble. I'm a ghetto denizen. Anthony saying, been having a bad week. Thank you for being here. Thanks for what you do. It means a lot to many more people than you may realize. That's very kind of you. I'm going to tell you right now, this is almost certainly true. And I rarely think about it. I rarely think about it, but I appreciate, and that's why I really appreciate you saying this. In my day-to-day life, I almost never think about the fact that I could be having a very positive impact on people. I try to dictate my conduct in a way that I feel is going to be putting out exclusively a healthy message. That's mostly out of a fear of harming people. So it's not that I feel like I'm afraid that if I say something and that gives someone a bad suggestion, a bad perspective, a perspective that's going to be self-destructive to them, that would make me feel like dog crap. So in that sense, I take the responsibility of controlling how I say what I say and what I express in a way that should hopefully come across as if it's 100% natural, while at the same time having guardrails as to how I express myself, or in a way that's going to be not going to be twisted in a way that could harm people. And occasionally I screw up all the same. Occasionally I'll say things I don't even realize that how people are taking what I'm saying. And and I end up harming others. And anytime that's ever been called to my attention, I feel like crap afterwards. So, but as far as like the having a positive impact and people like being able to laugh along with me and stuff like that, and like how that can make them feel happy and stuff like that, I almost never think about that. So, but and that's why I appreciate you calling that out. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So Trump asked El Salvador for citizen and El Salvador back. Is that not extradition? I predict El Salvador will say no. You predict El Salvador will say nope? I'll tell you right now, I predict that it all depends on how Trump asks. If Trump says, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you give him back. So do what you can to send him back here. I think they'll say yes. If he'd be like, so the court is making me ask for him to come back. I don't really want to have to ask this question, but the court's asking me to facilitate. And he is like, so do you want to send him back here, or would you rather hold on to him? Because frankly, I think the guy's kind of a dirtbag, so I'm not really that excited about having him back. But the court has asked me to facilitate this. I think they'll be like, oh no, we're not giving it back to you. Oh, and the court has told me that I can't really negotiate with you on this, but I have to ask for him back. So do you want to give him back? This scumball who I can't stand? And they'll be like, no, we don't want to give him back. So I think they're likely to do whatever it is Trump wants. So Trump will just stop paying for his detention in El Salvador, then ask for his return. El Salvador will say no. That's another way to do it. Frankly, the simplest answer is get him back and then send him to Gitmo. Get him back and then send him to Honduras. Get him back and then send him to Colombia. Get him back and then send him to the Arctic Circle. You just can't send him to El Salvador, but that's all you can't do. We happen to send him to the one place that there's a stay and being allowed to send him there. Okay. What's stopping us from sending the day he shows up? Adios, amigo. Welcome to Peru. It's very easy. It's really very easy. You get a one-way ticket to China. Send him to Russia and pack his bags with like 4 ounces of weed. Whoops. There you go. There you go. LEO, IJ, and BIA validated his MS-13 membership and deportable. U.S. government MS-13 terror organization. Abrego is now a terrorist and deportable. Like I said, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Seriously. Get him a ticket to Russia. Just leave him. Just and throw $100 to Ukraine on his Venmo and back him with some weed. They'll give him 2 lifetime sentences. That's simple. It's not that hard. All right. Tomorrow, my friends. Tomorrow, I expect that I will be on layback law. That's probably happening tomorrow. I need to check one thing real quick here. Let me just check real quick. Karen Reed has 16 jurors so far. They still want 2 more. Two more for alternates. I have a feeling I'm going to be streaming this on Tuesday morning, but I'm not going to be streaming it tomorrow. All right, Tuesday. I'm expecting Tuesday morning. I'm going to be streaming this trial. That's what's going to be happening. Karen Reed. I'm going to be spending my Passover streaming this thing. You took care of the rental car?
Nope.
What are we going to do about that? I'm going to have to rent a car. You guys better join me because I'll tell you right now, me streaming this next week, I'm going to have to bring my whole studio. I'm going to Virginia next week. I'm going to bring my whole studio down to Virginia so I can stream this trial. So I hope you'll join me when I'm streaming the Karen Reed trial next week. Otherwise, I'm going to feel like a doofus. I'm going to feel like a doofus sitting there by myself. Needs populate Greenland, send them there. That's a good idea. Nice. I like it. With the Canucks or whoever they have up there. Awesome. That's a great suggestion. All right. Tomorrow's Playback Law. And next week is Karen Reed. I am not going to be here Friday night because I'm never here Friday nights. I'm not going to be here Saturday night because that's the first night of Passover. Not going to be here Sunday night because that's the second night of Passover. I'm not going to be streaming anything on Karen Reed on Monday because that's the second full day of Passover. I do expect to be streaming on Monday night. And then I'll likely be streaming the Karen Reed trial on Tuesday. At some point, I'm going to have to drive my studio from my current location to Virginia. That's going to take several hours. So I don't know where I'm going to find that time because it's going to be somewhere between the Karen Reed trial thing on Tuesday and my night show on Tuesday. I don't know. We're going to have to figure that out. You want to know where you can find me? goodlogic.locals.com. That's where I'm going to keep you updated. Please, while you're here, like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And most assuredly, unless you're a they, them, don't eat the lab meat. Okay? It's not meant for you. It's meant for they, them. And do not eat soft bugs. Don't eat soft bugs. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Have a good night. And as always, Godspeed.